Hello, everyone. How are you today on this beautiful September 19th, 2024? I hope all is well. I'm still trying to get into the chat, guys. I'm working on getting into the chat. Give me a moment. Why is it not showing me that I'm actually live, guys? Okay, I don't know why this doesn't show that I'm live, but it says I'm live. Hold on. I'm having technical difficulties. Let's see here. Give me a moment, guys. I'm trying to figure this out. See, that says end. And I am very much live, but for some reason, I don't see it on my end. I'm gonna get out of YouTube and log back in. Here we go, finally. Okay, guys. All right. So we are here today to go over day 3 of the trial of Carly Gregg. Carly Gregg, at the time of her crime, was 14. She unalived her mom using a pum and also attempted to unalive her stepdad. So let's get into day 3. Guys, if you're here right now, please be sure to smash that like button for me one time and share the live stream so we can get the room full in here. Get some more people in here to watch this trial with us. All of my legal beagles. Hey, Kaya and Kayla's mom. All of my legal beagles in the chat and on the replay. Weigh in on this case. What are your thoughts? Did she have mental health issues at the time? Was it a case of her, being out of her mind? Or was this just a case of a young girl who decided to make a very, very terrible decision, life-changing decision, actually? So let's get into this, guys.
Adjust yourself up to the microphone. You don't have to speak directly.
Okay.
But do when you speak, so that lady in the very back row.
Okay. Got it.
You understand that you're now under arrest, so you're sworn answer, you're subject to felony perjury. All right, you may proceed.
If you would, Olivia, introduce yourself to these men and women.
I'm Olivia Liebert,
And Olivia, where do you work?
Precise Mind.
And tell us a little bit about what Precise Mind is.
It's an outpatient mental health clinic, and we do research and mental health care for all ages.
Just to be clear, you're a little nervous today, right?
Yes, yeah, I am.
Is this your first time to ever testify?
Yes.
All right. How do you, and what is your role at Precise?
I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner.
And can you kind of tell us a little bit about what that is and what you do?
Yeah. I got a degree with a master's degree in advanced nursing practice. So I chose to specialize in psychiatric mental health. The nurse practitioner program requires 1,200 hours of clinical practice, and we have to do different specialty groups, have experience with different specialty groups like geriatrics, adolescents, outpatient and inpatient psychiatry. So it's just a specialized nurse practitioner role, provider role.
And when did you do that?
That was 2.5 years ago, and I graduated in December 2021.
And have you been at Precise the whole time since then?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what is it that you do? I know you told us that you're a nurse practitioner there, but what is it that you actually do, like with patients at Precise?
We evaluate them and assess them, and we diagnose and then do medication management.
When you're evaluating them, Is it important that they provide you accurate information?
Oh, yes, very.
And why is that?
Because we base our diagnosis on that.
Did you have the opportunity to have a patient by the name of Carly Gregg?
Yes,
Do you see her in the courtroom?
I do.
Is she at the defense table?
Yes.
Olivia, I want to talk to you. Do y'all keep medical records of your treatment that you provide to patients?
Yes.
And did you
Come
do
on.
that with Miss Gregg as well? Remember, it's with
Max, Ski. Sorry, guys, I had to call my grand dogs.
I previously is State's Exhibit number 19. You could take a minute and look at that and see if you recognize those documents.
Yes, these are my notes from her visits.
And again, why is it important that we have medical records?
Well, we can't remember everything that we've done, and just to basically keep a treatment plan of what we've seen, what we think is going on, and what we need to address, and then the plan that we come up with the patient and or parents.
Do you recall the first time that you met Carly Gregg?
Mhm.
When was that?
That was January 15th,
Okay.
2024.
And prior to actually having an appointment with you and you being in the room with her, did she also fill out any paperwork or have any testing done?
They are required to fill out intake paperwork that have a few screenings and just demographic information.
Did you have Miss Gregg do any additional screenings or questionnaires?
No.
And who has them fill out if you'll turn to base stamps number, it's 757, Olivia, in that.
Okay.
I'm looking at something called the cardiac screening questionnaire.
Okay. Got it.
Kind of talk us through what that is and who has the patient fill out that form.
These are all sent to every patient. It's just like a whole intake packet, basically. If they're a minor, usually the parent does it. And this cardiac screening is mostly for patients that we're going to have on a stimulant or something that could affect their cardiac function.
And in your treatment with Ms. Gregg, you didn't really need much from the cardiac questionnaire. I want to take you to, looks like there is 2 pages after that. There's an adult ADHD self-report scale checklist.
Mm-hmm.
Is that similar in nature in that the patient fills that out before they ever meet with you?
Uh-huh.
Is that something that you review?
Yes.
I want to talk about just a couple of things on that
Okay.
page. Olivia, down in question 6, it says, how often do you feel overly active and compelled to do things like you're driven by a motor?
Mm-hmm.
And the response was very often.
Right.
Did you review that when you were making rendering treatment to Carly?
Yes.
What about number 9 when she said she had difficulty concentrating on what people say sometimes? And she said often.
Mm-hmm. See that?
Okay. And then if you'll turn back to the next page for me, 760, how often do you have difficulty unwinding or relaxing when you have time by yourself? And what did she say?
Rarely.
And what does that mean to you?
That this is just normal adolescent behavior. We have ups and downs at that age, and typically you can have a range of energy and or sleep disturbances throughout that age group, throughout life. So that just means that she has no trouble unwinding and relaxing, just what it says.
And then when you take the page before that, when she talks about being overly active and sometimes having concentration problems, did you take that to be the same thing, just a regular teenager that has ups and downs?
Once I asked her more about possible ADHD, that was ruled out. So yes.
And so this is not your entire treatment of Miss Gregg, right?
Absolutely not.
I'm going to ask you to keep looking. There's something called, Olivia, the modified mini screen.
Got it?
On the following pages, it's 761, 762, and 763. What is, if you can tell us, those of us that are not in the medical field, what the modified mini screen is?
this is one of the intake screenings that we do just to kind of identify, really to let the patient look at possible symptoms they could be having and then just answer yes or no to those so that we're made aware of them. I usually overlook these before the patient comes in and just to kind of have an idea of what to ask about that I need to, focus on beforehand.
And if the patient responds yes or no, you would then ask some kind of follow-up questions.
Definitely.
When you're meeting with them.
Mm-hmm.
And did you do that specifically with Carly Gregg?
Yes.
I want to point you to the very last page of that document. Question number 21. If you could read that for the ladies and gentlemen, what the question is and what Ms. Gregg's response was to that.
Have you ever heard things other people couldn't hear, such as voices? And she said no.
And what date was that was put in your system?
January 15th, 24.
2024.
Mm-hmm.
So, Olivia, you told us a little bit about the, and I think that most of us have been to the doctor's office, right? You have to fill out these forms, different places, different forms. You said you look over those forms.
Mm-hmm.
And then tell us about what you do kind of when you meet a patient for the very first time.
Okay. Usually I ask about kind of what brought them here, what their chief complaint is, so to say. And then I do a whole mental evaluation, and that includes sleeping and eating habits. For her age group, I would ask about social stressors, friend groups, if she has a good support system, a number of things, just to kind of narrow down what's going on.
And I want to talk specifically about Carly Gregg.
Mm-hmm.
When she came in, what were you told was the reason for her visit with you?
Depression and anxiety, and she had some social stressors.
And what did she describe those social stressors to be?
We talked about her childhood and kind of having not a great relationship with her dad, and an altercation with her mom recently. I'm going to refer to my notes.
Yeah, if you would take a look at that and then tell us what you've had a chance to review that. And that's the note from January the 15th of 2024?
Yes. She said that she had started feeling depressed since 6th grade, and then the social stressors were her parents and their custody battle.
Did she also mention that she had a little sister that had died some years back?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you, it says that about midway down, it says she's in the 10th grade at Northwest Rankin, and she loves school and is the valedictorian.
Yes.
How did you get that information?
I was mostly asking about school in regards to ADHD and ruling that out. And so I asked her how school was, and she said she loved it. She's a great student, and she's a smart girl.
Did she tell you that she was the valedictorian?
Yes.
Would it surprise you to learn she wasn't?
No.
Let's see. She talked about, in your notes, it says, talking about that she was in therapy previously.
Right.
What did you learn about the reason that she was in therapy when she was younger?
If I understood correctly, or remember correctly, it was based on the divorce court or custody court ordering her to go to equine therapy.
And who was that divorce? If you don't know, that's okay.
I think it was a custody battle between her dad and her mom.
Her biological dad.
Right.
Thank you for clearing that up for us. And at some point, down at the end of the note there in your history, it says her mom says that she's been lying and talking to a guy on Snapchat on a burner phone, and she's hiding it from her mom.
Mm-hmm.
Her mom made her cut him off after they found out she was cutting her thighs and taking sleeping pills.
Right.
Is that something that you remember discussing with Carly and Ashley Smiley that day?
Yes.
And at any point, did Carly say, "No, I wasn't taking sleeping pills"?
Not that I recall.
And at some point after your evaluation with her and you're in there on that first day, was there discussions about maybe giving her some medicine to try to help with her issues?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
First, we talked about counseling, and that was definitely recommended. And then we kind of pointed out the priorities and what was getting in the way of her life the most and making things most difficult and what was a priority to address. And then we talked about medication options and what to start.
And what did you end up starting her on?
Zoloft,
And do you remember what the milligrams was?
25 milligrams daily.
And tell ladies and gentlemen just a little bit about, is that a lot of medicine? Is that a little bit of medicine?
No, that is that's a starting dose, and I'm usually conservative with my approaches, so that was just a normal starting dose for her age.
And is that one of the lowest dosages that you can actually prescribe?
Yes.
I want to walk you through, Olivia, on page, I'm looking at page 744, so I want to make sure we're looking at the same thing, under behavioral health history.
Which page was it?
744 down at the bottom right. I'm still in your January 15, 2024.
Okay. Got it.
Down there it says, Carly had grown tired of counseling and wanted to stop. Do you remember them talking to you about that?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more?
After the equine therapy, she had tried other counselors that she wasn't necessarily happy with, and stopped at some point.
Get over here and stop.
It actually even says
Sorry, guys.
providers appeared
Do not do that. Get over here, Ski.
Carly grew disillusioned with the courts.
Right.
Were those your words or something that they told you?
This portion was filled out by Ashley.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
I want to take you to the next page where you talk about mental status exam and risk assessment. And if
Okay.
you could tell us what that is and what you're looking for.
We're really just observing for any kind of abnormal behavior or things that stand out, like memory, attention span. They articulate well. They're cooperative, and then mood, affect. If their judgment is sound, and if they have any presence of psychosis, hallucinations, delusions.
So I want to walk you through a couple of those for Carly on January the 15th.
Okay.
What did you report her psychomotor behavior to be?
Well coordinated, which is normal.
What about her speech?
Normal rate and volume.
She wasn't talking really fast or really loud. What about when you go to her about her cognitive abilities on that day? Can you describe for ladies and gentlemen what you said about her attention span and concentration?
They were all within normal limits.
Her orientation to time, place, and person.
She was oriented to all.
And so what does that mean?
That she's aware of where she is, who she is, and the date and time and situation.
What did Carly report regarding her recent memory, her ability to recall things?
That it was within normal limits.
And what about remote memory? So things that were not happening right at that moment, but kind of in the past.
Same.
Down a little further, you talked about her emotional state. Can you tell us what her mood and affect were?
They were during the appointment. It was normal and alert and oriented and appropriate.
Her judgment and insight that day, is that something you also took into consideration?
Mm-hmm.
And what did you determine to be Carly's judgment and insight?
Within normal limits.
I want to take you, Olivia, to there's a section in that assessment about thought processes.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us about what you observed and what your records indicate about whether or not Carly was having abnormal or psychotic thoughts on January the 15th, 2024?
She denied those.
And did she ever tell you that she was having those types of thoughts before January the 15th of 2024?
No, she denied hallucinations or delusions.
And what was your diagnosis of Carly from your encounter with her in January 15th of 2024?
Adjustment disorder with mixed anxiety and depressed mood, and then major depressive disorder, single episode, moderate severity.
So for those of us that are not in the medical field, will you break that down for us and just tell us kind of what that means?
Sure. An adjustment disorder is basically just based on a stressful situation that might have happened that is their reaction to that. So it's pretty common, especially in her age group. So, and then I specified, there's a specifier that you can add that says with mixed anxiety or depressed mood. So I added that. And then major depressive disorder, And then you can specify single episode or if it's been recurrent, and then the severity, if it's moderate or severe or minimal.
And you put single episode. Can you tell us what you meant by that?
Just that it wasn't chronic, that I was aware of at that time.
And so, and again, you're just able to render your opinions based off the information provided.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Does that appear to be, I'm sorry, there's actually another page to that. I want to talk to you about that before we move on.
Okay.
It talks about your clinical assessment and treatment plan, and we've already talked about what medication you put her on.
Right.
Tell us, there's another paragraph on that page that says SSRI /SNRI/TCA, and then it talks about patient warned of possible side effects. Can you tell us what that means?
This is just a warning for those drug classes that of possible side effects that could happen that I go over with all my patients.
And did you go over those side effects with Carly Gregg?
Yes.
And one of those side effects is self-harm, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you tell them, if you're having thoughts of suicide, what do you need to do?
Go to the emergency room, call us, and stop the medication, or go to the emergency room if you are afraid that you're going to harm yourself or others.
And at any point between January and the next time you saw Carly, did she tell you that she was having any trouble with her medication?
No.
I want to talk about the next time that you had the opportunity to provide treatment to Carly. Was that on February the 14th of 2024?
Correct.
And the notes I'm looking at say that was a telemed.
Right.
And it was mom was present.
Uh-huh.
So tell ladies and gentlemen, what does that mean, telemed?
They just have the option to do in person or a Zoom call for their appointment.
And what did Carly tell you? There's sort of a history provided by the patient. What did she tell you about the medication she was on at that point?
That it had not really had an impact on her at that time.
And so kind of what was your discussion about? We're on 25 milligrams. And then what did you talk to them about?
How it's affected them, and if they've had any bad side effects. And if they have not, then, and it has not done anything like for her at that point, then we usually go up on it.
And I want to talk about those side effects because your medical records specifically say the patient denied SI, HI, and AVH. So if you could walk us through, what does it mean when it says patient denied SI?
Suicidal ideations.
And when she denied HI, what is that?
Homicidal ideation.
And what about when she denied AVH?
Auditory visual hallucinations.
So she's denying seeing things that other people don't see and hearing things that other people don't see.
Right.
Did she also deny any other side effects from the medication?
Right.
You did a mental assessment and risk assessment on Miss Gregg again on that day.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk us through that day? Was she oriented to time, place, and person?
Yes.
And did she report having any trouble with recent memory or remote memory?
No, not that I saw.
Down under thought processes, did she report having any abnormal or psychotic thoughts?
No.
And again, on page 3, in the records, it talks again about these SSRIs. And I think I failed to ask you, Olivia, is Zoloft an SSRI medication? Mm-hmm. What does SSRI mean?
Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and that's the drug class for Zoloft. And that just means that it increases the available serotonin in the synaptic.
What is serotonin?
It is a neurotransmitter that most people call the happy neurotransmitter, and it affects mood and sleep.
So when you put somebody on an SSRI, the goal is to try to make them a little bit happier.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Hence the antidepressant medication is
yes.
going to help depression.
Yes.
And it says that, again, the patient was warned of any side effects. Mm-hmm. Do you recall if you specifically went back over that with them?
I don't recall.
Okay. Was that the you had a telemed conversation with them? Carly discussed that she didn't feel the medicine was really doing anything to her, so you decided to up it to 50 milligrams. Mm-hmm. Was there an opportunity that you had to see Carly after that?
Yes, one more time.
One more time. Okay. Mm-hmm. And was that in person or was that telemed?
That was telemed as well.
And the records that I have been provided show that you saw her on March the 12th
Right.
of 2024.
That's right.
Could you tell us about what was relayed to you by Carly on the 12th?
She said that the medication was making her feel like a zombie.
And what was your discussion with them? What she stated that she kind of felt zombie like.
I never want that for any adolescent. So we definitely were not going to increase it, and we just decided to go ahead and switch it to a different medication so that she didn't have that flatness and take away her personality.
When you talk about switching the medications, did you tell her to stop taking the Zoloft? Tell us about what your recommendation was.
I recommend tapering off so that you don't have any kind of discontinuation syndrome, which is a possibility, or rebound symptoms. So I told her to take 25 milligrams of Zoloft for 10 days and then stop it, and then start the Lexapro for 5 milligrams at the same time.
I want to back up again. I'm not in the medical field, so I want to make sure that tapering off means the same thing, I think.
Okay.
So she's on the 50 milligrams.
Right.
And then you want to put her on 5 milligrams of Lexapro.
Simultaneously as going down on the Zoloft.
So the Zoloft, you're saying that come down a little bit of this
right.
while we're taking this so that you don't just get off all the medicine.
Right. Weaning off.
And you said something about to rebound effects, to prevent rebound effects. What does that mean? If
you have a discontinuation syndrome, if you stop your medication abruptly, there's always a risk for symptoms to come back, maybe worse, and then other things that just are uncomfortable whenever you're withdrawing.
And you don't know when you prescribe people medication whether they're adhering to your recommendations or not.
No.
At any point during that evaluation with Ms. Gregg, did she report that she was hearing voices?
No.
In fact, I think the very last line you said, again, she denies suicidal ideations, that she denied homicidal ideations. Is that right?
Right.
And that she denied AVH,
auditory visual hallucinations.
And you also did a mental status exam and risk assessment of Ms. Gregg from that day.
Right.
And I'm looking at your records, base stamps number 754. Could you tell us what your findings were with regards to whether or not Carly Gregg was oriented to time, place, and person?
She was still oriented within normal limits.
So again, she knew where she was, she knew who she was.
Normal limits.
And her thought process rate.
Normal rate and rhythm.
So if you would, I think I'd asked you about that, Olivia, before now. So she had said on her questionnaire there were like some racing thoughts.
Why did the volume go out?
But when you observed her, what does her thought process rate was normal and in rhythm mean?
That it was not racing.
And that was the same on all 3 times that you had come in contact with her?
Right.
And then she also, you had questions and reported
Hey, Patrina.
in your records that her, there have been no thoughts of abnormal or psychotic thoughts. Is that correct?
Right.
So to be clear, at no point in the 3 times that you treated Carly Gregg did she report hearing voices.
Right.
At no point did she report that she was having lapses in memory.
Correct.
Did she ever use the word derealized?
No.
She never described herself as feeling derealized?
No.
Did she ever use the word disassociation?
No.
Are those words that people typically use when you're treating them as patients?
Not typically, no.
Those are more like clinical terms.
Right.
Court's indulgence. No further questions, John. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good.
How many times did you see Carly from January to March of 2024?
3.
And how many of those times were in person?
Once.
And how many of those 3 times was Ashley Smiley also present?
All 3.
All 3. And was she in, like when you were seeing Carly in person, was she in the room with you guys?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. And what, if any, conversations did you have with Miss Smiley during the course of your treatment with Carly?
For any minors, we have to get consent for treatment and medication. So we talked about the whole treatment plan and what they were okay with and came up with a plan together.
Okay. Is it fair to say that you don't have the same confidentiality between a medical provider and a patient if that patient's a minor and their parents is in the room?
We can, by law, we have to report anything. We cannot tell anything that they tell us except for if they are a danger to themselves or others.
But if the parent's in the room with them?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so there's really no confidentiality between you and Carly if someone else is in the room with you.
I'm not sure I understand.
If a parent is in the room with you, Carly doesn't have confidentiality between you and Carly, right? Because somebody
She
else
could have told me anything. We could have spoken alone. I gave them the option of that too. Mm-hmm.
And if Carly would have reported to you between January and March that she was having auditory hallucinations, would that have been something you felt like you needed to report to her parent?
No.
You wouldn't have needed to tell her mom that she was
not legally, no.
Okay. But just based on your own personal treatment, would you have felt like you needed to?
Personally, yes, probably.
Okay. And if you knew that Carly had reported to her best friend and in her personal journal that she was hearing voices, would that have changed your diagnosis of Carly?
I can only go off of what I assessed at the time.
Okay. If Carly would have told you that she was hearing voices
Mm-hmm.
And having these auditory hallucinations, would that have changed your treatment of Carly?
Yeah.
Would it have? How so?
I would have to roll out. Well, we would have potentially started her on a different medication.
And different how?
An antipsychotic is what we use to treat that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And why would you use an antipsychotic in that situation?
Because that is what hearing voices is. It's psychosis.
Okay. And is it fair to say you can be a great medical provider, great at your job, and doing your very best job, but still miss things sometimes?
Sure.
Is it fair to say that if a person is experiencing memory loss, they might not always be aware of it?
Possibly.
Is it fair to say that if a person has lost time, they might not always be aware of it?
Sure.
And if we can look at, do you still have your report in front of you?
I do.
Can you look at page, at the bottom, I think it's 742
Mm-hmm.
in red. And can you look at symptoms?
Uh-huh.
And the visit date there is January 15th, 2024.
Right.
And was that the first time you saw Carly
Yes.
and her mom?
Uh-huh.
And what symptoms were reported at that time?
Depression, anxiety, cutting, insomnia, overthinking, hopeless, racing thoughts, and stress.
And if you will turn to page 745.
Okay.
And again, this is the same visit date, January 15th, 2024.
Yeah.
Can you read what's written there under family behavioral history for father?
It says father, manic bipolar, ADHD, drug, alcohol, and prescription abuse. And this was filled out by Ashley.
And is bipolar disorder, based on your knowledge and experience, is bipolar disorder often hereditary?
It can be.
And can you tell me what's the difference between someone feeling sad and a major depressive disorder?
Yeah. We all have changes in mood. Sadness is considered normal, and a depressive episode or depression, major depression, is something that interferes with their daily life.
Okay, so it's affecting how you function.
Right.
And if you could, will you turn to page 748 with me?
Okay.
And if you look at the last paragraph on that page, the first sentence, and this is, I guess, when you're going over
Right.
prescription medication.
Mhm.
And again, this is still from January 15th, 2024. Can you tell me what's written there on the sentence that reads, this can lead to?
This can lead to increased thoughts of self-harm. Many psychiatric medications have been shown to possibly worsen the symptoms or cause increased thoughts of self-harm. Please stop the medication and notify the clinic if this occurs, and seek help in the emergency department if you do not feel safe.
So it's commonly known in the medical community that sometimes if you put somebody on an SSRI, it can worsen the symptoms they're already experiencing.
The black box warning is for self-harm and suicidal thoughts. So that is a possibility.
What is a black box warning?
Something for the whole class that's considered serious.
Okay, so it's like a warning.
Mhm.
Okay. And if you will, I just have one more question for you. If you can turn to page 753. And this was your March 12th, 2024 visit.
Uh-huh.
And can you read the second sentence on that page? And this was after the telehealth visit with Carly and her mom. It starts with, she said she doesn't like the Zoloft.
Right. That it makes her feel like a zombie. So we will wean off of it and switch to Lexapro.
And then will you read what patient's mom?
The patient's mom declined Prozac as she herself took it years ago and it gave her suicidal thoughts.
And is that what Miss Miley reported to you that day?
Yes.
Thank you. Beg the court's indulgence, Your Honor. Is it fair to say sometimes patients don't tell you everything you need to know?
Right.
Does that happen more so, like not just with children, but with all patients?
Well, if they're not telling me, I don't know.
But it's fair to say that happens.
Yeah.
No, it's under the witness.
Direct examination.
Olivia, I think on when Miss Todd was questioning, you said something about that you gave Carly the option to meet with you alone. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Usually I ask right when I go get the patient out of the waiting room, do you want mom to come or do you want to meet first alone? And I don't recall whether she wanted to be alone. If she wanted to be alone, I would have seen her alone, of course.
And that didn't happen in this case?
No.
Ms. Todd asked you about if a person was having memory problems, they might not report it. They might not know to report it.
Right.
Did Ashley ever report to you that Carly was having memory problems?
No.
Did Ashley ever report to you that Carly was having disassociation?
No.
Did she ever report to you that Carly had said that she feels derealized?
Objection.
Did Ashley report to you that she had ever had homicidal thoughts while she was on Prozac?
No.
And I
She wasn't on Prozac.
Ashley.
Oh, no.
The medication, and Miss Todd thankfully had you read that whole thing. It talks about self-harm.
Uh-huh.
It never says that it can cause homicidal thoughts, right?
No.
And in fact, none were ever reported to you in this case.
Correct.
Ms. Todd asked you about the medical history on page 745 regarding Carly's dad. And I think it was your testimony that Ashley had filled that information in.
Right.
You did not diagnose Carly's father
No.
with having bipolar.
No.
They do mention, though, that he has a drug, alcohol, and prescription abuse problem, right?
Correct.
In your experience in training, Olivia, can people that are on drugs sometimes appear to have bipolar symptoms?
Sure.
And sometimes doctors, even though they're really good at their job, they might miss something and misdiagnose someone with bipolar.
Correct.
And you have no way of knowing if Mr. Gregg's diagnosis was actually bipolar, do you?
No.
And it very well could have been that it was his drug problem.
Sure.
And so drug problems are also hereditary, aren't they?
Yeah.
Drug addiction. I want to take you to page 753. Ms. Todd asked you some questions about that note, and that was your treatment record from, February the 14th, I think. Hold on, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. That's March the 12th of 2024.
Okay.
That very last line, what did you report regarding Carly's sleep habits?
She reported good sleep.
So March the 12th, 2024, she's telling you that she's sleeping well at night.
Right.
Again, just to be clear, you can only treat with what you're provided with, the information you're provided with.
Correct.
And you were never told that Carly had any memory lapses.
No.
Any auditory voices.
Right.
No further questions, Your Honor.
This is to be finally excused by the state,
Yes, sir.
by the defense. Where you go, please leave the exhibit. State may call its next witness.
State calls Rebecca Kerr.
Okay, so they're calling their next witness. This case is very, very sad. It's just traumatic to think that this young girl has thrown her entire life away.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but
Her
the truth.
entire life. Just so sad.
Obviously, adjust yourself up to the microphone. It's not necessary that you speak directly into the microphone. I need you to speak loud enough that lady up there in the corner can hear you. Okay? Do you understand that you're now under oath and your answers are sworn answers subject to penalty of perjury?
Yes, sir.
All right, you may proceed.
If you would introduce yourself.
My name is Rebecca Kirk. I'm a licensed professional counselor.
And Rebecca, where do you work as a licensed professional counselor?
I'm an owner of a small practice called Magnolia Counseling in Madison, Mississippi.
If you could tell us just a little bit about your educational history.
I received my undergraduate degree in English education from Mississippi College, and I taught some prior and most of it simultaneously while I've been a licensed professional counselor. And then I received I taught accelerated English mostly, so gifted students chiefly, in the 9th grade at Madison, Rosa Scott for 14 years, and 2 years in Virginia. And then I also received my master's degree in marriage and family therapy and individual counseling from RTS Jackson, which stands for Reformed Theological Seminary. And that consists of a very robust master's degree program where we do 400 face-to-face contact hours in clinic, and then 600 indirect supervision hours, and then postgraduate degree. We work and do 3,000 more hours with the public under a licensed supervisor before sitting to take the mental health equivalent evaluation that the state requires for licensure. I also have to do 24 hours of continuing education classes every 2 years to maintain that certification and licensure.
And so, is it safe to say that you are in fact licensed?
I am.
And you were back in March of this year too?
Yes, ma'am.
Rebecca, it sounded like you have a lot of experience working with teenagers too.
I do.
Did you have the opportunity to have a patient or a client by the name of Carly Gregg?
Yes.
Do you see Miss Gregg in the courtroom?
Yes.
Same Miss Gregg that you provided services to?
I do.
Do you keep medical records with regards to the sessions that you have with your patients?
I do.
May I approach the witness? Rebecca, I've handed you what's previously been marked as State's Exhibit S21. Actually, I think that might be Defense Exhibit D21. Excuse me. If you'll take a look at those for us.
Okay.
Do you recognize that document?
I do.
What is that?
These are my entire treatment notes and summary of counseling Carly Madison Gregg.
And in some of those notes, Rebecca, when we got them, there was some writing, like some handwritten stuff in that.
That's right.
Who did that?
Okay, so that the original intake form that she's referring to is completed by Ashley Smiley, or was completed by Ashley Smiley, and the last page concludes with questionnaires, checking off like main mental problems that a person might be experiencing. Also asked to list the goals for therapy. And the first session that I have with someone, I go over the fact that since she's a minor, I need to speak with just that first session, one of the parental guardians, unless there is a need to contact them otherwise. I make that very clear to any minor and any adult that I see, that confidentiality, and I do kind of want to say this, it's very important to mental health professionals to maintain confidentiality and to not really betray that trust. It's very important. And I am doing that somewhat today from some people's perspective, but I'm not according to the Mississippi state law, because of when you declare reasons of insanity, I do have permission to discuss. She has given me permission to discuss her memory. So confidentiality is important to me. And I make that extremely clear. I just did then. Sorry for that. I worked with teenagers for many years, and so any mental health professional does say and has a duty to say that it is confidential under with the exclusion of just a few circumstances, which would be if someone reports that they're going to harm themselves, if they know of a threat of harm to themselves or another, or if there's any physical abuse. And so I did meet with Ashley Smiley to answer your question for a portion of the first session. And so it's kind of confusing, that last page. I want to explain it. She completed it. She said that there were 3 goals. There are also questionnaires, that are customary. Is it helpful for me to describe what's on this last page or not?
Sure. You'll just tell us. We can just tell
Sure.
If you would, what was the date that this paperwork was filled out?
This was her very first session with me, which I think was January 22nd. Does that sound right? 2024.
Your records reflect the first time you know it was January.
Yes, that's right. I see it here.
So I apologize, I interrupted you a little bit. Yes, if you'll just tell us sort of what this handwritten note reflects and kind of talk us through that first visit with Ashley and Carly.
Okay. So the first note that I have was completed, or the first set of goals on that last page of the intake form says by Ashley, she wants to feel better about herself. And secondly, another goal would be self-care, management, internal thoughts. So then I followed up, and she also wrote, Carly has been complaining of sleeping trouble and thoughts of depression, hopelessness. We discovered issues of cutting and taking old sleeping pills. Those issues have been removed and controlled, but also signify the possible level of depressive thoughts. So then I would continue to just question Ashley Smiley and, wrote down on the same sheet some of the answers she gave me. And then I met with Carly the same session and added to some of that information on the same page that Carly, based on talking to Carly.
See, kind of down at the bottom of that page, Rebecca, there's some things. It's kind of almost like a checklist. This actually says checklist of current functioning, and then somebody has marked easily angered. Do you know, is that something that you would have done, or that either Ashley or Carly did?
Either Ashley or Carly, and I would assume it would have been Ashley, but then I confirmed and went over it verbally with Carly as well.
So they both reported that she was easily angered.
Yes.
It does say that she has intrusive or disturbing thoughts. Did y'all talk about what that meant?
Yes. Just basically, I asked her, one of the biggest things that you do is you ask why now, because a lot of times people do war with common stressors and then more severe ones. And I wanted to know exactly why they were coming. And Ashley had said that Carly had been cutting herself, or she had found an old iPod. And in that old iPod, she found out that Carly had been cutting herself for some time. And she also described some dark thoughts. And so I tried to kind of get to the bottom of what that was, thinking that they were, representative there by that check mark of has intrusive, disrupting thoughts.
And at some point they talk about, you have notes, and it looks like they mentioned that Carly has trouble going to sleep at night.
That's right. And that seemed to be a big deal to her, the sleep issue.
When you're treating a client, how important is it that you're getting accurate information from them?
Extremely. Again, that trust is so important. And so if you're not receiving the correct information, you can't see the whole picture. So you can't really treat the person in the appropriate ways, tailored for them.
We talked about that you had a meeting with Ashley and that you met with Carly. Who knows Carly better than herself?
Yeah.
No one, right?
Right.
So I want to ask you, Rebecca, on this first meeting, did Carly ever report to you any use of illegal drugs?
No.
Did she ever report to you that she was hearing voices of any sort?
No.
Did she ever report that she was having any sort of hallucinations?
No.
What about, did she ever report to you that she was having memory trouble?
No.
What about feeling derealized? Did she or Ashley ever bring up the word disassociation? And to be clear, I want to talk about the first day, but was there ever a time in your treatment of Carly that she reported that she was having any sort of blackout? Like there were times where she didn't remember what she felt?
No.
So on the first visit, you kind of go through the current functioning and the checklist with Ashley and Carly. And then you actually provided some chart notes from that same meeting.
That's right.
If you could, I think you talked about this, that Mom reported there was a burner phone. If you'll look down on page 2 of your records, it says Mom was upset, she lied, and when she asked about the relationship. Is that something that Ashley conveyed to you, that she was upset Carly was lying to her?
Yes.
And then when you go down a little bit, there's a little bit of handwriting. I think it says her bio dad.
Correct.
Who wrote that in the records?
I did. It was a grammatical, just edit for clarification.
And to be clear, there's some other times in the records that when you produce these, you went in and kind of wrote things.
Because I want to be fully present, but I also want to take, records of what's going on for my need later to help her.
See, it says that she was 4 when her parents separated due to, and you put his and then her bio dad's pill, alcohol, and pot addiction. It goes on to say he was getting high in front of her. Do you remember who told you that?
Yes, both of them did. Ashley actually kind of broke down teary-eyed in the session, which I inferred was what we all feel as parents, which we, feel, am I the best parent? She felt a little bit, I read and then told her, this is not your fault, because she had discovered that he had been doing that for quite some time before Carly told her. It may have been like a year and a half, and I didn't get the impression the visits were often, but I mean, that's irrelevant. When she went, said that he would be high constantly in front of her with drugs all around. And then when she did tell her mom, she stopped, and then they were in actually court, discussion with trying to terminate his rights, I guess, permanently. And that was actually going on while she was seeing me.
And so she's got these other things that Ashley's told you about, the sleep trouble, the things, but you also learned in meeting with Bill that there's a custody battle going on.
Correct.
What about your note also says she was also taking sleeping pills because last month she hadn't been able to sleep and woke up at 2. And then it talks about now she's taking melatonin. So I want to be clear, in your records, it appears that the melatonin is not the sleeping pills.
Correct. In fact, it was my perception at the time that was one of the things Ashley was upset about, is that she was taking sleeping pills.
Did they ever tell you where she'd gotten those?
No, I know nothing more than that. Sorry.
Is there anything else that you recall specifically about that first interaction with Carly that we have not discussed?
The whole impression of working with her overall seemed to me to center on what was making her cut, these dark, nights of the soul, so to speak, when
Hey, KJ.
She reported having like existential thoughts about life and, the meaning and things like that. And so that's kind of what I flagged in my mind as a practitioner to try to develop more trust and a desire to go there to see what was troubling her.
And do you recall, you said you kind of build rapport, trust with these people. Do you remember how many times you actually saw Carly between the first visit and your last visit with her?
Yes, I saw her every week, every work week, once a week, for a total of 9 sessions, which would have been 9 hours, not counting that time with Ashley, so it would have been a little less, that first session.
The next time you saw Carly in your records is from February the 2nd of 2024. Is that right?
Yes.
I want to talk to you. It says persons in attendance, patient. So can you describe for us, what that means?
I'm trying to see where you are. Can you tell me what page you're on again?
Yeah, sorry. Page 4 of 24.
Okay.
And then about a little more than midway down on the bottom, it says persons in attendance. It says patient.
Patient, right.
What does that mean?
She was the only one there from session 2 to session 9. I spoke and interacted with only her, with the exception of Ashley always brought her to her appointments. I think that's an accurate statement. I think her stepdad did come with Ashley maybe like once or twice. I know like on Valentine's Day, for instance, they were together.
But he didn't ever come into the room.
No, nobody ever. It was just the waiting room. So I would see them in the waiting room, and that was all.
On that same page, Rebecca, you did, it looks like kind of an assessment of what you might do with a patient each time you meet with them.
That's right.
Could you tell us what you observed of her behavior that day?
Yes, it says appearance, normal, grooming and hygiene, attitude, calm and cooperative, behavior, no unusual moments or psychomotor changes, speech, normal rate, tone, volume without pressure, affect, normal range, congruent, thought process, goal-directed and logical, perception, no hallucinations or delusions, orientation ×3, so that's like where you are. The time, you can see where you are, hear where you are, those kinds of things. Memory, concentration, short and long term intact, insight, judgment, good, mood, stable, and angry and sad.
So she reported to you that she was angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to take kind of a couple of those one by one, Rebecca.
Okay.
You talked about behavior, no unusual movements or psychomotor changes. Can you tell us what that means?
Yes. Sometimes people are just very clearly on edge and they can't get to a calm place, and that's evidenced by a lot of movement in their chair or their body that's maybe not related to their emotional feeling. of something they're describing necessarily, and then just like rapidity of speech, like very rapid, maybe loud speaking, things like that, maybe looking around a lot.
And you didn't notice any of that?
I did not notice any of that ever.
And it says her thought process was goal-directed and logical. What does that mean?
She was able to carry on a conversation coherently without distraction, and that would have been okay if she was distracted. But she's very gifted and very, good with her words, and we discuss things in a normal manner.
You said perception, no hallucinations or delusions. What does that mean?
She was not reporting seeing or seeing anything that wasn't there, or not being present with reality or anything of that sort.
And what about her memory and concentration? What did you notice from that day in February the 2nd?
Her short and long-term memory seemed fine to me.
I want to talk to you about what your actual note says from that day and that visit. It says she's frustrated that her friends don't take school as seriously as she and loses her patience. Tell us what you meant when you wrote that.
She was gifted, as I think is a clear fact. She really enjoyed school, and I've taught her type of student for 14 years. And so she had like an excitement to talk about school. And she also, I thought that probably one of the things she was dealing with that was difficult for her was possibly that sometimes when you're so gifted and different from others anyway, it doesn't have to do with that. You might feel lonely and a little bit more isolated. So I kind of attributed it mentally. I made a mental note that was probably a relation there. But she was just the patience part. She was just described like being frustrated with peers who were not as quick as she, and that she knew she could be a little rude with them. We also kind of talked about it's difficult when your mom maybe is a teacher too, because you appreciate good teachers and know how hard they work. And
Rebecca, your notes say that she's regretful when she snaps at them and hurts their feelings. So Carly was reporting to you that she's like snapped at some of the kids at school.
Yeah, and I did not get the impression it was in a violent way, but maybe like her temper, she knew that she was losing her patience with them.
And later on about midway, it says she gets angry at others sleeping through such good teaching.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you were talking about, that she recognized she had good teachers.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you, Rebecca, about the next time that you saw Carly. I think you told us that you were seeing her pretty much weekly.
Mm-hmm.
The next record I have is from February the 9th of 2024.
That's right.
Want to talk to you again about what you observed from Carly and what you put in your notes regarding her behavior.
Okay. You just want to know
Page
that
6, yeah, of 24.
Okay, the appearance and stuff.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
I think, let me just look at it to make sure I'm not misspeaking. Everything that I read a while ago, and I can read it again if the jury would like that, was normal, except the only change I made was her appearance. I specified her appearance was goth-like, wearing her grandmother's batwing black goth pants and straight hair partly in her face.
But everything else was in normal limits. Her behavior, her speech, her affect, her thought process, the fact she was not having hallucinations or delusions.
Correct.
Her orientation to time, place, and what's the third one? I'm sorry. Time is 3.
Time, place, and your hearing, like just all of your 5 senses, you're aware.
And then memory and concentration, short and long term, were intact.
Yes, correct.
And then you also have some treatment notes from that day.
That's right.
I want to point you down to, it's toward the bottom of the paragraph. Toward the bottom of the paragraph, it says she has started cutting. If you would, can you read that sentence for me?
Yes.
Looks like it's fourth up from the
Yeah,
bottom.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to, because I have an edit. I have a grammatical error edit in there, and I'm trying to make sense of it. 1 second. Sorry for that.
No, that's right. I didn't want to read it myself in case I was reading it in the wrong place.
Okay, she has cut, not currently, but in the past, when alone and in her head a lot. It was my understanding that what kind of prompted treatment with the psychiatric nurse practitioner, Olivia Lieber, was that she had found that iPod with this information about how she had been cutting and how she had some dark thoughts. And I was trying to follow up, like I was saying a while ago, with like what was going on with you, like in those times.
And I think your note actually says, Rebecca, after some existential crisis moments of her atheism resulting in a lack of consciousness.
Correct.
Can we break that down just a little bit?
Sure.
Those are some big words for me.
Yeah, that's fine. So I never really could get her to open up about that very much. I am, and I want to be clear that atheism, that was something that I was kind of trying to think might be a possibility. She didn't, as I recall, really use that word. But she did mention the word existentialism, and basically, in my opinion and training, I do think that's related to thoughts of what is the meaning of life, what's its purpose, why are we here? It was my and I could talk more on that maybe, but basically, she would get in a depressed state and cut, and she described it as an existential crisis. But I couldn't really get her to describe a whole lot about that.
But you tried to ask her about that.
I did, yeah.
I want to take you to the next time you saw Carly, Valentine's Day, February the 14th of 2024. And I apologize, Rebecca, I didn't ask this earlier. At the top of each of these notes, you mentioned like whatever medication she's on.
That's correct, yes.
Are you and the nurse practitioner, Olivia Lieber, are y'all in contact about that? Or is that relayed by the patient?
The psychiatric nurse practitioners or psychiatrists who prescribe psychotropics, they oftentimes refer a patient, and then unless there's a need, like for an alarm, situation, oftentimes we don't collaborate unless needed. So no, I would be reporting what Carly told me about her med changes.
Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. We talked about this, and I'm going to ask you about each time you saw Carly, what you noticed, who was in attendance on that day. Well, we might stream on this. You said the only time anyone else was in the room was that first visit.
Correct.
What did you observe about her behavior on February the 14th, 2024?
Okay, and I'm just making sure I am looking at the correct note.
Yeah, I'm on page 8 of 24.
Okay, thank you. Everything that we have prior discussed was the same. The only difference was her appearance. This time was just black clothing, not necessarily her grandmother's batwing black pants with black shirt.
I want to take you to the next page, Rebecca, about midway down. She says, your record says she rated hating herself, including her humor, and says she wouldn't be her friend if she wasn't her because she's dismissive of others' ideas when she knows it's wrong. Was that something that Carly related to you?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
She seemed to, again, be struggling with maybe some social stuff that I believed was stemming from her feelings of being different and having such a zest and fervor, and she really does love to learn. And so she would just talk about, it seemed like she was being introspective about, like, what kind of a person am I?
And it seems like a lot of her conversations, at least up to this point, revolved around her at school.
Yes, that's correct.
Was she kind of obsessed with being great at school?
Yeah, she liked school a lot. And she was glad that I could tell that she had been affirmed a lot in her life for being intelligent. And so she was proud of that, but she also just had a genuine love for learning.
I want to take you to your next visit with Carly, February the 21st of 2024, and talk about her appearance. Does it look like that's the same appearance and behaviors, thought process, no hallucinations, no delusions, things like that we talked about?
Correct. And nothing has changed.
Your treatment note, the very first line of that says she's reading The Castle and she likes it and will read Crime and Punishment. So you told us earlier that you were an accelerated English teacher. What is The Castle? Because I don't know.
I actually do not know that one very well. I just know that they're well known. She also mentioned that she wanted to read The Bell Jar. But I had wanted to read Crime and Punishment for a long time, and I've actually owned a copy for 21 years. So I was really glad that she wanted to read the classic. I knew that was a classic.
Can you tell us, what is Crime and Punishment? Kind of what's that story about?
Crime and Punishment.
This is the state's witness, and I think they're bringing in these specialists to address the defendant's claim of mental health. Are they approaching again? Let's see. Let me see if they are approaching. Yep. They have to approach the bench. This young girl.
I asked you if you would tell me a little bit about what Crime
did
and
quite a
Punishment
bit
is about.
On that day.
Crime and Punishment is about a protagonist, which is the main character. It was written by a Russian author back in maybe 1866, I believe. And it is the entire book, very difficult book, about a psychopath who lives in Russia, and he is poor. He is a student. He is very intelligent, and he comes on hard times, impoverished, and he has this obsession with this obsessive thinking of basically planning to murder a woman with a hatchet. And the novel kind of really, that murderous act happens pretty early on in the novel. And then the remaining novel continues to kind of be about his processing of it. And he even published something in the paper about why people kill and things like that. Anyway, and then he eventually is sentenced because of his admittance of his crime. That kind of also was found out as well. But he was declared insane, and he served 8 years in a Russian labor camp. And when he was in the Russian labor camp, he was unrepentant, and he did not think that what he had done was wrong and that the woman deserved it. He did actually kill her sister too with a hatchet to her skull, but that was kind of an accident because she came home too early.
And Rebecca, in your notes, you'd actually underlined the fact that she was reading that book.
Well, that was just for grammar, because you're supposed to underline the title of a book if you can't italicize it.
Okay. Did you and Carly have any other discussions about reading any kind of literature, like kind of dark literature like that?
Not that I can recall. Okay. And to be clear, in this note, she had not yet read it. She was reading The Castle. This was on 2/21, and she was going to read Crime and Punishment, and she did so later. I think she read it the week of spring break. And I saw her Monday after spring break. That was my last session with her, the Monday first back after spring break.
Okay, thank you for that. I want to take you to the next note, February the 26th of 2024. Again, without belaboring the point, same appearance, behavior, speech, affect.
The only difference is appearance is black t-shirt and jeans.
In your notes on that day, it said something about she may be on the spectrum. Can you tell us what that meant?
Carly came in that session and she was telling me that she had a lot of symptoms of kind of autism, and that's what that means. And so, like Asperger's, and she was talking about just sensory issues and things like that. But yeah, that's what that means. Yeah.
And so Carly was telling you that she thought she had autistic symptoms.
Yeah, I mean, she never used the word, but I knew, and most teenagers are very familiar with what that is. And I just assumed that she thought she had that. Yeah.
And based off your treatment, did you think that she actually had autism?
I didn't. She did report too that her mother didn't either.
I want to take you to the next time that you saw Carly, March the 5th of 2024.
Okay.
Again, you saw her in person.
Correct.
And the history given regarding attitude, behavior, speech, affect, thought process, perception, orientation, memory, and concentration, kind of all that's the exact same.
That's correct.
In your note on that day, you have CBT and attachment therapies were discussed and explored to help alleviate anxiety. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, CBT is shorthand for cognitive behavioral therapy and attachment therapy. So those are there are many, many different forms of therapy that we're trained in, and cognitive behavioral is really good for depression and anxiety. It's about kind of trying to analyze your unpleasant thoughts and basically, for lack of better words, get a grip on them and have a better life experience. Attachment therapies are rooted in this well-known belief and research about the parent-child bond and how we feel attached to people in our lives and how that influences us.
You also put in your records, boundary setting and identity work was explored. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So boundary setting would be just your classic, any kind of boundary you need to set to assert your comfort as a human being while also, not causing harm to another, obviously. But a lot of people have trouble saying no to people or sometimes saying yes to them, depending on the circumstance. So it's just kind of more of a work through of like, what do I want and how can I, in a healthy way, communicate that to others.
And at this point, Rebecca, is it safe to say, you're still in therapy, she's still in therapy with you, and you're trying to work on not cutting anymore and these thoughts of just anxiety and depression that
That's
I've reported?
correct.
There weren't any other known psychiatric things disclosed to you?
No.
I'm going to take you to the next time that you saw Carly, March the 13th of 2024. And again, talk about the in-person visit and the observations that you made regarding her appearance, behavior, speech, and et cetera that we've been through. That's not changed either.
Correct. It's the same.
She does report to you that Olivia Liebers changed her medicine because she reported feeling numb.
Yes.
She didn't laugh as much, nor did she feel as upset when her mom yelled at her.
Mm-hmm.
That she finished her reading. Is that what you were talking about? That she told you that she finished reading the books?
That's right. Mm-hmm. Specifically that one, yeah.
And she sort of relates like her anger to her mom's stress, I think. And I want to ask you about that. She says when her mom is less stressed, she feels it in less anger. Can you talk to us about what that meant?
Okay, I'm trying to find where that is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, that's kind of a poorly worded sentence. Sorry about that. I was kind of trying to do it while attending to her, but basically, she appeared to me to feel some codependent feelings, or maybe be a little bit codependent on her mother's emotions. And when Ashley felt something, Carly, seemed to be affected by it.
And I think I misspoke, Rebecca. I said when she finished her readings, and then at the very end of that, it says she's about to read.
Oh, yeah.
So that was the following week that you were talking about.
Yes, this is the week of spring break, and she was going to read it during spring break, is what that said.
And then she talked about her mom asked her to promise that she wasn't trying to be a boy. Can you tell us? And then you wrote, I think it was you wrote, due to her new haircut. Can you talk about that?
Yes, I think we only talked about her haircut maybe twice, and she had literally just gotten her haircut before that session. So that day, this would have been a week before my last session with her, I think. She had her med change, she'd gotten her haircut, and I think on a session before that, she had just expressed, I always kind of want to make sure someone's not feeling like identity problems regarding their sexuality or something that needs to be discussed. And she did talk about how her mom, I think, wasn't a fan of it or was a little bit afraid or something. I'm not sure. I really cannot recall, but I feel like the reason why I said this is because we had probably talked about it earlier, as I recall. And so I was trying to follow up. How did you think about your haircut? So she was okay with it. And she was like, yeah, she just said, that promise me you're not trying to be a boy.
And did you, in your 9 sessions with Carly, did you ever think that she was having some sort of identity crisis?
No, and in fact, I followed up that time and the very next time, which was the last time I saw her, because the next time I saw her would have been the first time her peers at school had seen her new haircut. And I wanted to be sensitive to the fact that, are you being bullied at all? Because there were other negative things that had been said to her and other peers. And she always answered with a positive affect, like, no, it's fine. And I asked her too, like, was that the truth to your mom? You can tell me, it's fine. I'm not going to discuss your stuff. And she's like, no, I told her the truth or something like that.
So I want to take you to the next report that I have is a treatment date on March the 18th of 2024. Is that the last time that you saw Carly?
That's correct.
And I do want to talk specifically about each of these on March the 18th. So you saw her in person by herself, right?
Correct.
And you reported that she was wearing a black t-shirt and jeans again.
Yes.
What was her behavior like?
Completely normal, the same as it always had been. She had just gone back to school. It was Monday, the first Monday back after spring break. And this was it a 5:00 session? I'm not sure.
Yes, it's 5:50 p.m. to 5:55 p.m.
Okay. And so 5:50 to 5:55, 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
So I met with her for an hour, and basically everything was the same that it had been as far as the way she appeared to me.
And at no time did she report any hallucinations or delusions? At no time did she report any memory or concentration issues?
No.
I want to take you to page 19 of 24. This is regarding your psychotherapy notes, that last visit you had with her. And she talked about kind of walking on eggshells consistently while mom's around. And I think you touched on this a little bit. Carly was maybe a little bit codependent on Ashley's feelings and behaviors. Can you tell us kind of what you meant, what that meant about walking on eggshells?
Yeah, but I think I want to say something a little bit before that, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
I honestly kind of had to lead this session with her and try to dig into some of this stuff that she might be feeling, because I was starting to really kind of wonder if I was really serving her the best I can. And, if I can and someone else can, I want to refer someone. I knew that she was a school teacher. Blue Cross state insurance plans aren't real rewarding on that end. And so I really had kind of contemplated, am I really helping her? Because I felt that the sessions were really mostly about school, but I knew that there had been a big event with why she was coming. And so I really kind of honestly did a little bit of soul searching and decided before this session that I wanted to really try to go there to maybe some painful things that she maybe was being hesitant to speak about. And so I did kind of bring that up. And I think that's important to know. Like, she didn't just start talking about her mom. I was trying to like really get to some hardcore stuff with her in this session. And she, we talked about how her mom, when her mom was angry, it was really hard for her to really handle that. And so I'm always trying to get a gauge, like, obviously, let's rule out abuse. I did not have any indication ever before, during, or after that her mother was abusive, but I can't make that assumption as a clinician. I need to really be sensitive to anything that might not be being reported. And so I wanted to get kind of a measure of like, what does Ashley look like when she's angry? And she described, and it's in this note, that, she raises her voice sometimes or slams doors, cabinets, speaks in shorter sentences. I think we actually discussed an example that's not noted here. Can you give me an example of her being angry or something at you? And she gave an example of maybe grading some tests of some kids. She's a math teacher. And so they were doing poorly on it, which is not what any teacher wants when she's grading tests that she knows she taught well, which I'm sure Ashley did. And she noticed her mood and she wanted to be helpful. And she kind of maybe had, and I don't think maybe this event had necessarily recently happened. I was asking her to give me one so we could work through conflict resolution and her emotions and stuff. And she said that she had done, had offered to help her, and then her mother kind of snapped at her in response. And so I try to do a lot of work with like, okay, well, let's just take that example then. What do we do when we're upset? How can we communicate calmly, clearly? I emphasize the importance of cooling off. Your body needs to self-soothe. When it gets flooded and your heart rate gets to a certain degree, you can't think properly. And so we talked about things like that.
And your report actually says you talked about understanding anger and how to respond to it.
Correct.
That anger is a secondary emotion, and how to confront her mom when she's cooled off was explored. Is that what you kind of just described?
Yes,
to us?
exactly.
3 ways for Carly to approach anger.
That's right. Underneath anger is really sadness or fear or a blocked goal of some sort. Yeah.
I know that's the last time that you treated Carly, but there's actually another note that was added to your records May the 16th of 2024. Could you tell us about that?
Yes. Whenever termination of care has occurred, it's customary for clinicians to do a summary note. Either, sometimes very, very rarely, it just, no communication ever happens, but oftentimes it's the joint, agreement or the agreement of one versus the other. And this was a very different case. And so I had to write a summary report on it like I would any other.
I want to talk to you a little bit about that, Rebecca.
Okay.
It talks about within 24 hours, something terrible had happened. And you state in your last session with me, she appeared emotionally stable and she had no suicidal or homicidal feelings suspected by me nor spoken by her. So I want to ask you about that. You said that she didn't tell you about any feelings, but you didn't think that there was anything like that going on either.
No, that's correct.
And then you also noted that she did not indicate that her medication change from the prior week was negatively affecting her.
Correct.
What did you mean by that?
Well, anytime that a person's prescription meds change, you need them to be very concerned about side effects, depressive thoughts, feelings of suicide, things of that sort. And so I wanted to follow up and make sure she wasn't experiencing any negative reactions regarding that.
You also said that, nor did she appear different from any other sessions, nor emotionally unstable or dysregulated. Can you talk about what that means?
Yes, just kind of basically what we said, that was on the first part of each of my sessions. Like, she seemed very oriented to time and space and didn't seem to have erratic speech, loud speech, to be overly angry or overly happy. Just, a normal situation, observance of her.
And then you go on to say she did not appear melancholy nor zoned out emotionally. Can you talk about what you meant there?
Yeah, she had reported several times that, at least one time maybe, but I feel like I maybe wrote it more than once. I'm not sure. That with some of the Zoloft, she felt like a zombie. And so, she never really appeared that way to me ever. But she had reported it. So I put it in my notes when that had occurred. But I was saying here that I didn't notice any of it as well.
And you talked about how you had gone through conflict management with Carly on the day before the incident.
Correct.
I think you also talked about kind of what you observed between Carly and Ashley's relationship. Can you talk about why you thought that was important to put in your record?
Yes, sure. Well, ordinarily, termination of care is in a very different manner, and I knew that this one was a very sad act that occurred, and I wanted to be clear that I did not ever observe them together other than in the waiting room, and I never really saw, anything that would allude me to believe that, or hint at any kind of very severe danger or threat.
At any point during your treatment and sessions with Carly, did you think that she was being physically abused by anyone?
No, never. In fact, I asked several times about the stepdad, and I'm very confident in her response, verbally and non-verbally, that it felt very much to me like that nobody that she was living with had been abusing her. Now, her biological father, yes.
And she described some incidents where he had been physical with Ashley as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then what about, I didn't see any note of this, but did she at any point ever report that she had been sexually abused by anyone?
No, she told me she had not.
Court's indulgence. No further questions, Ryan.
Doing well. How about you?
Just fine. My high school English teacher is about to be very proud. I too read Crime and Punishment, and you're right, it was written in 1886 by Dostoevsky. And isn't it true the main protagonist of that novel, Raskolnikov, killed his neighbor? The woman he killed was his neighbor, and he killed her because he hated her.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you speak up?
Yes.
Yes. And isn't it true, actually, by the end of that novel, Raskolnikov felt so guilty about his action and was so remorseful that he didn't only confess, but he actually, in an act of remorse, bowed to the earth?
That's not the way I interpreted it, but that is the thing about literature. There's a lot of interpretations.
Yeah. Isn't it true, what the book is actually about? The act of murder happens in the first chapter. Isn't it true that the entire book is about how murder is such a horrible act and the weight and consequences that it carries on a person who does that?
Yes and no. You don't want to get me started. I'll go into my literature mode, but I really don't think the point of the book was about how murder is such a horrible act at all. I think it was about the psychological dilemma of fleeing insane. And honestly, I think that's what that's about. It definitely is talked about, and there are different characters in there, including one that tries to kind of convert him to Christianity and stuff like that. But even when he's in the Russian labor camp at the end, he says that she kind of deserved to die. Like, I remember there being something like that. Don't quote me because it's been a minute.
But again, he hated his neighbor.
Yeah. She was a greedy, she loaned money to people and was very unkind to them, but he didn't know her hardly at all. He just went and borrowed money from her.
And he was poor and she was demanding it back.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
And the main character was poor and she was demanding it back.
It was like a debt type thing. She wasn't, I don't know about the word demanding, but yes, she was greedy. She was definitely greedy.
So he had a motive.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Did Carly hate her mom?
I never got that impression.
What impression did you get from Carly?
I got the impression that she had complex feelings about her mom, because one time we were talking about her. I tried to talk about the custody case a lot, and I knew that it was literally going on, and they were supposed to meet, and I would ask, how are you feeling about that? And I'm fine. And I got the impression, I'm just going to let the adults work it out. She seemed to have a lot of trust in Ashley to take care for her and to protect her, as well as her stepdad in that. And, but there was one time when we were talking about the bio dad and then her mom, and, she said emphatically, like, I know he doesn't love me. But I had to ask, like, do you believe that your mother loves you? And she really was a little unsure on that answer.
Yeah. Did Carly love her mom?
Yeah, I believe that she did. I had nothing to tell me otherwise.
You said that Carly was a little codependent on her mom's feelings. Do you mean that Carly's emotions were real tied in to how her mom felt?
Mm-hmm. It was probably mutual. Yeah.
And the feeling that, the example about, her mom, the example about being angry Carly gave you was actually about an incident in which Carly's mom got angry with Carly when Carly had tried to help her mom.
Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it really hurt Carly's feelings. Her mom snapping at her when Carly was trying to help. It hurt Carly.
That's right.
It didn't make her angry, right?
Well, I can't speak to that. In fact, I would assume it does make one angry from what I know about emotion. Again, anger is a secondary emotion. And it is the more safe thing that we feel when we maybe feel threatened or unsafe. And it would be understandable that her environment growing up, she had to deal with a lot of emotions, that she didn't get to maybe express healthily. So that can make one be anyone. And that's a normal thing.
And is it fair to say that Carly felt like she had to walk on eggshells around her mom because she didn't want to make her mom angry or more stressed out?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Carly was always very careful. She didn't want to hurt her mom's feelings, right?
I don't know about her always being very careful, but I do know that, and I think that would be impossible for someone to always, but I do know that she seems sensitive to her mother's feelings, yes.
And Carly didn't want to hurt her mom's feelings.
Right.
Is it fair to say that Carly really wanted to please her mom?
Yeah, I think so for sure.
Carly wanted her mom to feel proud of her? Mm-hmm. Is it fair to say that Carly didn't ever want to worry her mom?
I don't know about ever, but I do know that probably chiefly, like, no child wants to worry their parent. Yeah.
Is it fair to say that, Carly knew her mom was pretty stressed out and didn't want to add to that stress?
I really can't speak to, like, the level of stress she observed in her mother. But again, just making a basic assumption of any normal person, and she never led me to believe that she was different from any other average person. I would have concluded that, but I can't say that because I didn't observe every situation. Yeah. I only know what she reported to me when she came to me.
Okay. And is it fair to say that a person can sometimes, if their feelings get hurt and it makes them mad later, that person can feel mad without expressing that emotion to others?
Yeah, absolutely.
And did you in fact know that Carly never got a chance to read Crime and Punishment? I'm sorry.
No, it was my understanding that she did.
Well, it was your understanding that she was planning to?
No, I thought that she told me when she came back the Monday after spring break that she had read it, but
And is it And the question that, that you had asked Carly about her haircut and her friends teasing her about cutting her hair shorter, and about whether that meant something about her sexuality. Isn't it true that in your notes you reported she actually laughed in answering that question and said
Right.
no?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So she found that to be, somewhat a humorous.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Not a concern.
Well, what had happened, we were walking out actually with the padlock door, and I said, "Oh, what did your friends think about your haircut the first day back?" And she said, "Oh, they said it makes me look even more gay now." And I said, "Oh," I said, "Is that a true statement?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm sorry." And then she replied with, "Oh, it's not a big deal. Like, she's don't bother me." Yeah.
Yeah. And on the handwritten initial assessment that Ashley wrote to you, is it true that in that she wrote that Carly had been having intrusive, and she marked the box for intrusive and disruptive thoughts?
Correct.
Okay. Is it true she marked the box that Carly was having thoughts that got stuck?
Yes, that's correct.
Is it true that she reported several different times on this page that Carly had really been experiencing some difficulty sleeping?
Yes.
And in her own handwriting, doesn't Ashley write that Carly was severely unable in the last month to sleep?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And somewhat for the last year?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it also true that she wrote in her own handwriting that at 2 a.m., Carly had a habit of waking up at 2 a.m. and then not being able to go back to sleep?
Correct.
Okay. And isn't it true that Carly also wrote that Ashley had written that Carly seemed to have a poor self-image?
Yes. Wait, where are you referring to? I just want to
The
make
box.
sure. Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
And isn't it also true that Ashley had marked the box that Carly had been experiencing panic attacks? And when asked how often, Ashley wrote Carly had at least been having one panic attack per month.
Yes, with the correction of it didn't say at least, it said one per month. Yeah.
And isn't it true that Ashley had marked the box saying that Carly had been having difficulty completing homework or classwork?
Where's that one at? I'm sorry.
That one is, may I put your honor?
I'm sorry. This is kind of a busy page.
That one is right.
Okay. No, I don't. No, that wasn't checked.
For sure.
I don't think it was checked.
Can you tell if it was checked? If you can't tell,
You know what? Let me look at your page because you're right. Mine is a little bit.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
You need to refer to the original.
Yeah, KJ, she was having some type of,
To make a determination.
she was getting therapy
Um,
during this time
I
frame
mean, it
that
does
she
seem
unalived her mom.
hard to read because I have written some notes to the left.
She was
but,
receiving services.
that would be surprising to me, but I'm not saying that it may not be checked underneath my handwritten note to the left. I'm really unsure.
it's just hard to read
Yeah,
because of the
That's right.
handwriting.
Yeah.
So it could be, might not be.
Yeah.
And isn't it true that what is easy to read is that Ashley had written just a few short pages down that Carly had been sad and withdrawn in her mood?
Yes.
And at the top of that page, and I know it's kind of a little bit messy, but at the top of that page, isn't it true that somebody reported that Carly had made a 30 on the SAT?
Correct.
ACT?
Mhm.
Okay. And that somebody had written in the response to the first question, what are your goals that you hope to achieve through counseling?
Mhm.
Someone had written, either Ashley or you, she wants to feel better about herself socially, personally, physically insecure,
Yes.
and had been so since 5th or 6th grade.
That's correct. So she began by writing she wants to feel better about herself, and then I followed up with both of them and added more notes to give more detail to that. That's right.
Isn't it true also on that page, in kind of response to the question number 2, it says father had been emotionally and physically abusive.
Mhm.
and also had bipolar and
drug
ADHD.
addict.
Yeah, and drug addict.
That's right.
And that there had been times years ago that she had reported he, meaning the father, had been getting high in front of her the whole time during his visitation periods.
That's correct.
And then briefly describe your or your child's current difficulty. Can you read for us what's written there?
Yes, it says, this is written by Ashley. Carly has been complaining of sleeping trouble and thoughts of depression, hopelessness. We discovered issues of cutting and taking old sleeping pills. Those issues have been removed and controlled, but also signify the possible level of depressive thoughts.
So, did Carly's mom, and on this page, there's a box for, hurts animals. That box isn't checked, is it?
There is a box for, no, it's not checked.
And it's also a box for hurts friends or siblings. That box isn't checked, is it?
Correct.
During the course of your counseling with Carly, did you ever consider her a psychopath?
Never.
Did you ever consider her a sociopath?
Never.
And again, you met with her how many times?
9 hours, roughly 9 hours. Yes.
So 9 different sessions.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
From January to March.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And were you aware that Carly had written in a journal about hearing auditory hallucinations?
Mm-mm. Unless it was the reference to that iPod. I'm not sure if they're considering that a journal or what.
But the reference.
I was never told about any kind of hallucinations. Just dark thoughts is the way it was described to me in that iPod.
Okay. And did you know that in one of Carly's journal entries, when she was talking about feeling like she was losing control of the auditory hallucinations, she'd actually written in there that she had considered bringing her journal to you?
No, not at all.
Do you think that speaks to the level of trust Carly had in you?
I can't really speak to that. You'd have to ask her.
Were you aware of the fact that Carly has repeatedly told people that you were the first counselor she ever felt like helped her? Were you aware?
No, it's not.
If Carly would have reported to you during one of your sessions that she was experiencing auditory hallucinations, would that have been something you felt like you needed to report to her mom?
Not necessarily. I would have followed up with a lot of questions to determine if she was a threat to herself or others.
Okay. And if Carly would have reported to you that she felt like she was losing control of herself to the auditory hallucinations, was that something you would have felt like you needed to report to her mom?
Again, not necessarily. I would have asked her to clarify with a lot of questions. What does control mean to you? That means 1,000 things to different people. But if I had asked it enough to determine that she was a threat to herself or others, then yes, I would have reported it.
And is it fair to say that Carly had some fear in regards to her dad?
Her biological father?
Yes.
That was very perplexing for me, honestly. I just could not get her to open up a lot about what I knew had to have been traumatic instances. I mean, she seemed very indifferent and apathetic towards him. But yeah.
And is it fair to say that Carly saw her father as someone who is not a successful person?
Correct. Yeah, she did not like him.
Yeah.
She was glad she was with her mother.
Yeah. And is it fair to say that if someone is afraid of having a certain mental health diagnosis, that might motivate them to not be fully forthcoming with their therapist about what they're experiencing?
Sure.
And if Carly would have told you that she was smoking marijuana to help her sleep at night. Is that something you would have felt the need to tell her mom?
No.
Okay. Would Carly have had any way of knowing without disclosing that to you that you wouldn't have reported that to her mom?
Yes, she would, because I told her that on the first session.
But Carly had seen you talk with her mom before, correct?
Because she's smart enough to know that legally anyone under the age of 18 has to do it that way.
And did Carly or Ashley ever tell you about an incident in which Carly had gotten in trouble for taking a knife to school?
Never.
You don't recall that?
No.
And during the time in which you were with Carly, had either Carly or her mom reported to you that Carly had seemed to develop a hypersensitivity to certain sounds?
In that session note regarding the symptoms, she came telling me, she just gave me a lot. It's probably in that one. She kind of came in talking about a lot of symptoms that typically is customary to like an Asperger's or autistic diagnosis.
And that these certain sounds, when she heard them, kind of caused her to feel irritated.
Yes, but again, like it was not ever anything, I want to be clear, like a hallucinatory manner. It was all in the context of that person's tapping that pen or tapping their foot or something like that,
Yeah, not furious, but just annoyed, irritated.
Right.
Yeah. And based on your sessions with Carly, when Carly would mention, having periods of time when she would be questioning the meaning of life, did that seem to be during the time periods in which Carly was experiencing depression?
I need you to repeat that, please. I'm unclear what you're asking.
Yeah. When you talked about that Carly would have these existential times and she'd be questioning, the meaning of life and things like that. Was that also during periods of time in which Carly was experiencing depression?
Well, that's what was kind of problematic about treating her, is that was really the only thing of real emotional conflict that I ever had her report, and it was because of the iPod stuff. And so I kept trying to kind of dig and find out what was troubling her. So, during that's what I'm talking about with the existential. She didn't really open up a whole lot. The last session we did talk about kind of reality and life and morality and some things like that. But but it wasn't because she said she had been upset about it and needed to discuss it. It was based on something, I think, as I recall, her father is a Jehovah's Witness, her bio dad, and she knew I was a Christian because that's something that I like to tell people so it doesn't blindside them if they're different. And she said, "I'm sorry, I know you're a Christian. He's a Jehovah's Witness, and I believe that that's definitely a cult, So we kind of talked a little bit about it that way thematically, but not in a way that was, like I'm troubled and I need to talk about this kind of thing.
Yeah. And during your sessions with Carly, did she ever strike you as a violent child?
No.
And when you learned about the events that had transpired on March 19th, were you shocked?
It's the most shocking day of my life.
Yeah. And that's based on the 9 sessions you had with Carly and the hours you spent with her.
Yes, because I had no clue that nor had she ever reported that she was severely mentally troubled to any degree like that.
And you would just, based on your knowledge of Carly and her relationship with her mom, you were shocked to find out what had occurred on March 19th.
Yes.
Thank you. We tender the witness.
Distinguished new reader at.
Rebecca, as a therapist, how many people do you see that have complaints about depression or anxiety?
Almost every single one of them.
How many of them have gone on to kill their mom?
0. Oh, sorry, her. Before that, none.
Do you have any patients that have ever reported hearing voices?
I have sometimes, yes.
And how many of them went on to kill their mom?
None.
You were asked about whether or not Ashley being mad at Carly made Carly angry and hurt her feelings. And I think you talked about anger being a second emotion. Did that make Carly angry? Sorry, you got to answer.
Yes, sorry.
You were asked about Carly wanting to please her mom and not worry her. Someone keeping secrets from their mom about a phone mom didn't know about, a secret boyfriend, the fact that someone's using drugs and cutting themselves. Does that sound like somebody who's so worried about hurting mom's feelings to you?
Can you please repeat that question?
Yeah, sorry, it was a bad one. You were asked about Carly not wanting to anger her mom.
Right.
And keeping secrets from your parent, doing things that are dangerous. Does that sound like somebody who's worried about hurting their parents' feelings?
I mean, honestly, it's I can't really speak to that. I mean, I would think that there could be a lot of motivations regarding that.
Carly never reported having any mental health issues other than depression or anxiety to you, correct?
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Are those witnesses be filing excused by the state?
Yes, sir.
By the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, now you're free to leave. If you would hand that to the bailiff. After I take care of the jury, give me just a moment. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the jury is about 10:30 and lawyers want to talk. So that's a good time for y'all to use the restroom. Okay, everyone remain seated while the jury exits. Just knock on the door and let the bailiff know when we're ready, okay?
Okay. So that witness is excused. That was a lot. That was a lot of testimony. So clearly, this young child has.
All right, record reflect we're outside the presence of the jury. You had something?
Yes, Your Honor. I was just wondering how more.
She's been experiencing
The prosecutors intend to.
quite a bit prior to March 19th.
Okay. At least two, they said. All right. We'll be in recess for about 15 minutes.
Okay, so they're taking a break. They're going to be taking a break. He said 15 minutes. So we have 15 minutes to kind of chit chat. So for those of you who are just coming in on this, Carly Gregg, at the age of 14, in her home in Mississippi, upon arriving home with her mom was a school teacher, I believe, at the same school she attended. Took her mother's weapon from this, I think it was under a cushion or something, like up under her bed or something, right next to her bed, I think in a nightstand or something. She used that weapon and fired 3 into her mom. And then she walked into the kitchen from her mother's bedroom. And they have footage of all of this because the home had in-house cameras. There were cameras in the kitchen and cameras in the garage. Right after that, she went into the kitchen and sat down on a stool and started texting. The state has asserted that that text message was to her stepfather asking him when he will be home. when he responded, he's got a few more things to do and he will be on his way, she put a thumbs up and I guess sat there waiting for him. She texted a friend and asked a friend, she was texting friends asking them to come over. Apparently, she texted a few people. One of her friends came over. One of her friends actually offered to call 911, but one of them came over. She brought that friend into the room with her mother's deceased body. Prior to that, she asked her, "Are you squeamish around unalive bodies?" And the friend said they didn't know. They weren't sure. They didn't know. They'd never had that experience before, so they wouldn't know. So they get into the room, and the friend observes her mom there, unalived in the room. And then Carly told her friend that I put 3 in her, and when my stepdad gets home, I have 3 for him. And apparently, Carly and the friend were waiting for the stepdad to arrive. The stepdad finally arrives, and Carly utilizes the same pum pum and fires at him. I believe she hit him in the shoulder, and he was able to get the pum pum from her. He took it from her, and she ran. Her and her friend hightailed it out of the house. They ran. The father called the authorities. Man, that 911 call is hard to listen to. They played it the first day. No, if you guys want to hear it or missed day 1 and 2, it is also here on my YouTube channel on the docket. Please feel free to check it out. I'm going to go ahead and probably skip ahead once I finish giving you guys like the little background as far as what you missed and where we are. But he called, and it was between him screaming. When I say he was screaming, it was just a painful, gut-wrenching. You could tell that he was, really in disbelief. He was struggling with his words. The emergency personnel asked, tried to calm him as best as they could. I mean, how you can calm someone walking into your pumed at, and 2, you find out that your wife, her stepfather and her mother were married. So, I mean, I can't imagine being in that situation and having that happen to me and or my family. So he was screaming, and at points you couldn't really tell what he was trying to say, unfortunately. The authorities arrived at the home with rescue. They came in with the fire and rescue, as well as police, and they came in, and try to make sense of the entire scene, because I mean, it was clearly a crime scene at that point. They called for brought in investigators and detectives to begin working the crime scene. They asked the stepdad, who did this to you? And he told them, my stepdaughter, Carly. And, excuse me, I think the officer was a little confused because he kept saying, your stepson, what does he look like? What is he wearing? And the stepdad had to, correct him and say, no, my stepdaughter did this. And once they were on track with that, he let them know that her and her friend ran out the house through the back door. I think it was through the kitchen, and took off. So they began searching for her. And ultimately, clearly, they found her. The state of Mississippi has decided to charge and try Carly Gregg as an adult. This basically means that this young lady has the potential to be incarcerated for the rest of her life. These young people making some serious life-changing, no return. There's no return. There is no way to return from what's been done. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the case, that's just my little synopsis so far as what the state has shared with us. Let me see if I can speed this up and get this back on, because I don't want to be up here too late tonight. I really don't. I would like to get in bed at a decent time, a decent hour. Okay. Hold on. I need her coming on. I don't need her on the stand. I kind of wish they would do these without the breaks, but I mean, I guess that's the purpose of it being live. That's basically why they have the camera live in the courtroom, and it documents this. I believe is also probably considered to be a part of the court record at this point, because it's documenting the whole trial. So that's probably why they don't cut it. That's quite possibly why they don't clip it out. It would be helpful. It would be helpful for them to clip it out. I'm just waiting for them to reconvene and get that witness on the stand. But so far, they are presenting some decent evidence. There's decent evidence being presented here.
see.
So now they're swearing this new witness in. Let's get into the next witness's testimony.
Again, you don't have to talk directly in the microphone. Make sure that gentleman up there can hear you. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand you're now under oath and your answers will be sworn answers under the penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
All right, you may proceed.
Record.
Amanda Gugliano, Gugliano.
And Dr. Gugliano, where are you currently employed?
I currently work at Mississippi State Hospital, and I also have a private practice where I do forensic psychological evaluations.
And if you could tell us just a little bit about what it is you do out at the Mississippi State Hospital.
I am the director of the Forensic Evaluation Service. So we are the only forensic service for the entire state. We do some outpatient evaluations, but now things have changed. It's mostly inpatient evaluations. And then, so we do inpatient evaluations for the court regarding competence to stand trial, someone's mental state at the time of the alleged offense, and sometimes some other factors too, such as mitigating circumstances or a violence risk assessment. Then we also provide treatment for individuals who have been found not guilty by reason of insanity. And we provide treatment for people who have been found incompetent to stand trial, and we're attempting to restore them to competence.
And you talked about the fact that you, are a forensic psychologist that do, you also perform private evaluations or do something on the side. Can you talk about that, please?
Yes, I have a private practice where I conduct forensic evaluations for both the state and the federal court. And those are typically related to the similar issues as I do for the state hospital: competence to stand trial, mental state at the time of the alleged offense. I have also done some death penalty evaluations if someone's competent to waive or assert post-conviction appeals, or competence to proceed with post-conviction appeals also.
And when you're doing these evaluations, who are you usually doing those on behalf of?
Most often it's court ordered. So it's, in my opinion, when something's court order, I consider that as the court's expert. My report goes to the court, and then both sides usually get a copy of it. Sometimes I am retained privately by one side, either the defense or the prosecution, and then I'm conducting the evaluation for them. So the person that I'm actually seeing and evaluating is not my client. It's the court or whichever attorney retained me.
And so if they're not a client, you're not actually providing them any type of treatment, right?
That's correct.
Could you give the ladies and gentlemen a little bit of information about your educational background?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology and a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology from Lindenwood University, which is a private liberal arts school in Missouri. I received my master's in clinical psychology from the Arizona School of Professional Psychology in 2006, and I received my doctorate in clinical psychology from the Arizona School of Professional Psychology in 2008.
And do you have any type of licensure or certifications here in Mississippi?
Yes, I'm a licensed psychologist in Mississippi, and then I'm also certified as a forensic evaluator by the Department of Mental Health.
Tell us a little bit about what that means, evaluator through the Mississippi Department of Mental Health.
Yes, so the Department of Mental Health has a process where they train and credential psychologists or psychiatrists to be forensic evaluators. So they are credentialed to do evaluations of competence to stand trial or mental state at the time of the alleged offense.
Do you know how many of them are approved in the state currently?
I'm not sure our current numbers. There are some that are approved who don't reside in Mississippi. They do telehealth evaluations. I think we have around 20 right now, maybe, but not all of them reside in Mississippi.
And so that's 20 psychologists and psychiatrists that are have meet the qualifications for the mental department of health to do the evaluations.
Yes, that meet the qualifications and have applied to do those.
Do you belong to any sort of national or state level committees, any type of groups regarding psychologists?
Yes, I'm a member of the American Psychological Association. I'm also a member of the American Psychology and Law Society, which focuses on forensic psychology. I am a member of the Mississippi Psychological Association, and I'm also the president-elect for the Mississippi Psychological Association.
And I know we talked about the fact that you perform these types of evaluations for both, most of the time for the court, but also sometimes for the party that asks. How many times would you say that you have evaluated someone either for competency or sanity?
For competency, probably around 1,500 times. For sanity, probably around 500 times.
And have you testified in courts as an expert, as a forensic psychologist previously?
Yes, I have.
And how often would you say you've done that?
Probably about, I don't know exactly, about 45 times.
And you've actually been recognized by this particular court as a forensic psychologist expert, right?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, at this time, we would ask that the witness be tendered as an expert witness in forensic psychology.
No objection, Your Honor. I believe our CV has already been entered by stipulation.
All right, she'll be accepted as an expert in the field of forensic psychology.
Dr. Guglielmo, if you could tell the ladies and gentlemen the difference in like a treating physician or therapist and a forensic psychologist.
So it's a pretty different situation. I mentioned before, whenever you are treating someone, whenever you're the clinician, either a psychiatrist or psychologist, therapist, you're more of an advocate for the client, the person that you're treating. And you are treating and assessing them based on what they're telling you, usually for the most part. A lot of times, treating clinicians don't have much information or records outside of what the client tells them. So they just go off of what they see in front of them and what the client tells them. In doing forensic evaluations, the person that you're actually evaluating and talking to and assessing is not your client. As I mentioned before, it's the court or potentially a lawyer. It could also be one of the parents if there's like a child custody dispute and you're doing that type of evaluation, but typically it's the lawyer or the court. And in that case, you are not an advocate for the person that you're evaluating. You are supposed to be a neutral, objective evaluator who forms opinions based on the information that you have, and you offer those to the court. So there's no guarantee that it will be helpful or not to either side or to the court. It also, when you're a forensic evaluator, it's not confidential because you have to share the information that you gather with the court in a report, or you may end up testifying. I always warn people of that also. So it's also different in that doing a forensic evaluation, because there's legal issues involved, you rely on more than just the person's self-report. It's really important to have collateral sources of information. So you are always trying to corroborate what someone tells you to see if there's evidence in the records to support what they're telling you. Do other people say the same thing? You often interview friends or family, maybe even an employer of the person that you're evaluating. So it's not as clear that you're just taking what the person tells you as the truth. You're wanting to look for corroborating evidence and find where all the data is kind of pointing you. What direction is it all suggesting?
And you spoke earlier, Dr. Gugliano, about confidence and maybe somebody's sanity. If you could kind of describe for us what competency is first.
Competency in general can be applied to various different things. It's situation specific. And what it essentially means is that someone has the ability to do something. So it could be competence to make legal decisions or competence to be over your own medical care, financial situation, things like that. In the realm of criminal cases, competence is typically referred to for competence to stand trial or to proceed with their legal situation. And so that means, does the person have the ability to understand their charges, to understand the basics about the court system and how that works, to be able to appreciate the adversarial nature of the legal system, and that they're able to assist their attorney in their defense. So competence really has to do with someone's mental functioning presently in the current moment. Sanity or mental state at the time of an alleged offense has to do with how someone was doing mentally at the time of an offense sometime in the past. So it's a retrospective evaluation where you're looking at, you're trying to figure out whether someone was so mentally ill that it impaired their ability to know the nature, quality, or wrongfulness of their alleged acts.
And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Is there a certain standard in the state of Mississippi that forensic psychiatrists and psychologists have to follow when rendering opinions about sanity?
Yes.
Could you tell the ladies and gentlemen about that? I think you sort of described that, but just want you to talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, the standards is what we often call the McNaughton standard, because that's the criminal case that the standard developed out of. The person who was the defendant was Daniel McNaughton. And so the McNaughton standard is what we refer to as a cognitive test. That means that it's just based on someone's knowledge about something. So it's, do they know the nature and quality? That essentially means, do they understand the basic facts about what they did? Then understanding the wrongfulness is, did they understand that what they were doing was illegal? So some states have different standards. So some states include whether someone had the ability to control their impulses or whether they appreciated the wrongfulness. But in Mississippi, it's just a knowledge of what they were doing and if it was wrong.
So I want to be clear, you said something about other states allow whether somebody appreciates what they did was right or wrong. Can you describe for us what you meant by that?
Yes. So knowledge is really just understanding the basic facts about something. Appreciating is having a more in-depth understanding to where you can understand the societal and moral implications behind it and reasoning for it. So for example, someone might know that killing someone is wrong, that it's illegal, but they may not really understand why it's wrong to do that. They know that it's bad, they know they're not supposed to, but they really don't understand why. So that would be more the appreciation, where they don't understand the reasoning behind why it's wrong.
And Mississippi doesn't allow us to talk about the appreciation of someone, right?
It doesn't include that in the standard.
I want to talk to you about the defendant, Carly Gregg. How is it that you became, did you have the opportunity to work on an evaluation involving Carly Gregg?
I did.
And how is it that you became involved in that case?
You contacted me to see if I would be available to do an evaluation on Miss Gregg's competence to stand trial and sanity.
And was it your understanding that you were being court ordered for that?
It was.
And is that how you went about your evaluation?
Yes, it is.
And in fact, we talked a little bit about how that's different. But when you're court ordered to do it, you said you returned that report to the court and the defense attorneys, right?
Yes, actually in Mississippi, I submit my report to the circuit clerk, and then the circuit clerk distributes it to the judge, defense attorney, and prosecution.
Does the prosecution have any ability to edit the report that you prepare?
No.
Does the prosecution actually really have any input into what you put into your report?
No.
And sometimes those reports actually come back and say that the defendant is incompetent to go forward, right?
Correct.
And sometimes you will render an opinion that the defendant is in fact insane.
Correct.
I want to talk to you about this particular case. Dr. Guglielmo, did you prepare a report regarding your findings?
I did.
And are the opinions that you formulated in that report, are those based upon a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
To a reasonable degree of psychological certainty, because I'm not a medical doctor, so we use psychological certainty for psychologists.
Thank you for that clarification. And what types of items did you review before rendering your opinion in this case?
I reviewed some court orders involving this case. I reviewed some of the discovery materials. I also had some treatment records, not all of the ones that have been talked about so far by other experts. I had the Magnolia counseling records, so Ms. Kirk's records from the therapy. I also had precise clinical neurosciences records from the medication that she was being prescribed. I had a few records from the jail from her current incarceration related to some crisis contacts, but I did not have any records regarding the medication that she was being prescribed in jail. Then I also spoke with Ms. Newman about her concerns regarding the case, and I spoke to Ms. Todd, the defense attorney, about any concerns she had regarding the case.
Did you interview anybody besides the defendant in this case?
No, I attempted to interview her stepfather, but he had asked to have an attorney present, which I said was okay, and he was going to call me back where we could set up a time to do that, but he never returned my call.
Why is it important to try to talk to family members before you conduct your evaluation?
I do that because I'm trying to see if there's anything that they say that that will give me an idea of what to follow up on, or there may be something that isn't in the records that they're aware of. And sometimes they can give you a direction to go with your questioning. I do a pretty broad evaluation, but if there are any significant concerns or specific concerns, I want to make sure that I know about them so I can ask about them when I interview the defendant.
And Dr. Guglielmo, you just testified about some of the things that you reviewed, that you had conversations with both my office and the defense. Is that information, facts, and data that you typically rely on in conducting your mental health evaluations?
Yes, it is.
And is that information that is pretty regular for a forensic psychologist to consider when forming their opinions with regards to competency or sanity?
Yes.
Did you actually have the opportunity to speak with Ms. Gregg?
Yes, I did.
Was that interview recorded?
It was.
And do you record all your interviews?
I record most of them. There's a few times that I haven't for the federal courts because the attorneys have not wanted me to.
And why is it that you record those interviews?
I record them in case I need to refer back to my notes. I take notes while I'm interviewing someone, but I like to be as accurate as possible. And I really think that quotes are helpful for either a court or a jury, for either the judge or the jury, whoever's making the decision, to see what people actually say. So I record it for my benefit, and then I also record it in case someone wants to get the recording so they can listen to it. I try to have transparency in my evaluations. I'm not trying to do anything that I wouldn't want recorded. So it's to help just confirm what I'm reporting in my report.
When you're conducting one of these evaluations, Dr. Giuliano, is it your role to favor one side or the other?
No, as a forensic evaluator, your goal is to be as objective and unbiased and neutral as possible.
How often, when you're doing these evaluations, do you actually have mental health records from the day before a crime was committed?
Very rarely.
And how often do you get the opportunity to have a video where part of the crime is committed on the video to consider? It's not unheard of, but it's not in the majority of cases. I want to talk to you about the interview that you did of the defendant. Who was present during that evaluation?
It was myself, Miss Gregg, and Miss Todd.
And is it common in your practice for attorneys to be present during the evaluations?
I wouldn't say that it's uncommon. It doesn't happen in the majority of cases, but it's not unusual.
How often, when you have attorneys sit in, is it common for them to make comments during the evaluation?
Most attorneys don't say much during the evaluation unless the defendant asks them a question. I always let both the defendant and the attorney know at the beginning that if the defendant wants to consult with their attorney during the evaluation, we can stop and they can consult in private, or the defendant can even ask their attorney for guidance at any point without us also stopping the interview. So it happens, but most of the time when it happens, it's the defendant who initiates the consult with the attorney in the moment.
And in your training and experience and all the evaluations that you perform, is it unusual for an attorney to be asking their client multiple questions instead of you during an evaluation?
Yes, I would say that's unusual.
Dr. Giuliano, I want to talk to you about the specific findings in your evaluation. Can you tell us when you conducted that evaluation and sort of walk us through what happened?
We met in a room at the detention center, and it was for several hours. I think we were probably meeting for about 5 hours, but we had several brief breaks in that time to where the interview was a little over 4 hours, and we had a break for lunch also. But essentially it was me asking the majority of the questions to Miss Gregg, and Miss Todd interjected at some points, but that was pretty much it.
Were there things that Miss Todd shared with you that were not provided to you in discovery?
Yes.
Is that typical in cases when you have evaluations?
It's not unheard of. Miss Todd shared some things with me on the phone. I talked to her before I met with Miss Gregg to do the interview. So she had shared some things with me on the phone that I was not aware of at that point. And that's one of the reasons that I call attorneys, is to see if they have any information that may be helpful.
And when they give you that information, you then try to follow up, get some sort of confirmation about those statements or what that information was?
Yes.
What, if anything, did Ms. Gregg tell you during your evaluation about the use of illegal drugs?
She told me that she was smoking marijuana through a vape pen, and she denied any other illicit or illegal substance use.
What did she tell you about abusing any other prescription medication?
She didn't answer that question.
And was that important to you?
It's a regular question that I ask when doing an evaluation, both illegal drugs and prescription drugs or even over-the-counter medications or can have impacts on someone's mental health or in their functioning. So I routinely ask those questions.
And if someone were to have been on a prescription drug at the time of the crime, it would have been important for you to be able to explore that a little bit further, right?
I would definitely want to know if they were on medications at the time or if they were taking anything that wasn't prescribed to them.
And if so somebody wasn't truthful or didn't provide you an answer about that, that would impair your ability to make a decision about anything regarding medication. Is that correct?
It might not impair my ability. I'm limited in what I can say about medications. I don't prescribe medications. So I'm limited in what I can say about that, but it could limit things such as, it might be a consideration that someone's actions, feelings, behaviors could have potentially been due to a drug or medication. And so if you don't know that they were using that, then you wouldn't know that that's a potential factor.
I want to back up just a little bit. The defendant told you that she'd been using marijuana. You have the opportunity to review prior medical records in this case. Did you see anywhere in her prior records where she had reported the use of marijuana?
I believe she had reported it to the jail maybe after she was arrested.
Prior to March 19th of 2024, had she told any of her treaters that she was using marijuana?
From the records that I reviewed, she had not.
From the records that you reviewed prior to March the 19th, 2024, had she ever reported to anyone that she was having voices in her head?
No, she did not.
Prior to March 19th of 2024, in the records you reviewed, had she reported to anyone that she was having lapses in time?
She did not.
And did you find anything that was provided to you by either side to corroborate that Miss Gregg was having lapses in time?
Miss Todd told me during our telephone conversation that Miss Gregg's stepfather had mentioned that Miss Gregg was having lapses in time and kind of spacing out. And so I asked Miss Gregg about that during my interview of her.
But you weren't able to corroborate that with him?
No, I wasn't able to speak with Mr. Smiley.
I want to talk to you about the use of marijuana. Your experience, can the use of drugs alone cause some sort of psychosis?
It can.
And what about marijuana or THC alone?
It can. We thought previously there was a common belief that marijuana was fairly benign, but there are higher levels of THC in most marijuana now, or a lot of marijuana now. And so with the more potent marijuana, it is possible that people can experience symptoms of psychosis just from marijuana use.
When we're talking about symptoms of psychosis, can you describe for us what you mean by that?
That could be hallucinations, such as seeing things or hearing things that aren't really there and that other people don't see. It could be delusional beliefs, which are beliefs that are untrue, but the person staunchly believes that regardless of the facts or evidence presented to them that dispute those beliefs. It could also be mood symptoms like an emotional flattening to where they don't seem to have the normal range of emotions that most people experience. It could even be slowed thinking or slowed body movements.
During your interview with Miss Gregg, Did you talk to her about some things that might have been bothering her at the current time?
Yes, I did.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, may I refer to my?
Absolutely.
I always ask people that I'm evaluating, if you had to pick the one thing that was bothering you the most lately, what would that be? Because it's a pretty open-ended question, and it can kind of give you a good idea of what is, on that person's mind maybe the most. And Miss Gregg reported that she was bothered that she knew school was getting ready to start up or had just started back, and she missed school because she said she really enjoyed school and that had been a main focus of her life. She also discussed feelings of sadness, difficulty sleeping. She reported having mood swings.
What did she say about her mood swings?
She said that they could occur minute by minute or could happen over the course of weeks or days or months. She said, when I asked her to provide some additional clarification, she said, quote, "I'll be really happy 1 minute, then I'll be desolate the next," close quote. So she was describing, it seemed to me, pretty quickly fluctuating mood states that appeared at least somewhat dependent on her situation and what was going on with her in her life.
Dr. Gagona, you were in the courtroom during the testimony earlier where somebody had mentioned that Ms. Gregg's father potentially had bipolar disorder. Can you describe for ladies and gentlemen what bipolar disorder, I think it's type 2, is?
Yes, there's two different types. I'm not sure which one Mr. Gregg has been diagnosed with. Type 1 involves episodes of mania, which you guys had heard about previously. It's whenever someone has the really high emotional experiences. They have a lot of energy. They may feel like they're on top of the world, really happy, feel invincible, have trouble focusing. They may start a whole bunch of tasks but never finish anything. They can be more irritable. And it's so severe that it impairs their everyday functioning. Then bipolar 2 disorder is kind of a less extreme version of mania that we refer to as hypomania, where they're elevated more than what is normal, but it's not quite to what we consider a manic episode.
And when you're talking about a hypomanic or an episode in bipolar, is that consistent with somebody whose mood can change minute to minute?
No.
Could you describe for us why not?
Yes, for bipolar disorder, it's something that isn't based on someone's situation. They really have no control over their emotions. It's not due to something good happening in their life or something bad that's happened in their life. And for a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, they have to experience either the manic episode for 1 week, where from every day, more days than not, that they're in this hyper aroused state. For hypomania, they have to experience it for at least 4 days in a row. And so that's not something where you would see fluctuations within the same day or hours.
In your evaluation with Carly and your review of the medical records, was it ever disclosed that she had these periods of time that were 4 days or more?
She didn't specify an exact number of days. As I mentioned before, she said, it could be hours, days, weeks.
You spoke with Ms. Gregg about mood swings, and then she described for you at some point during your interview, I'm very detached. And I think you asked her to elaborate on that. Do you recall what Ms. Gregg told you regarding feeling detached?
Yes. So I was asking her questions that can sometimes be commonly found in people who have experienced traumatic experiences. So symptoms that sometimes indicate someone may have post-traumatic stress disorder. And we were talking about anxiety also, and how she didn't feel as bothered as she thought she should have felt by being in jail. And so I was asking her more about that, and Miss Todd offered that Miss Gregg appeared to be detached, and that Miss Todd thought that might have been due to Miss Gregg being in solitary confinement. She'd been housed by herself in the jail since she's a minor, so she has little interaction with other people other than the guards when they interact with her. And so I asked Carly about that, and she said, I'm very detached. And she said, and when I asked her to describe that a little further, she said, quote, I think when my mom would get on me, I would kind of slip away and not be in the room. I just kind of feel like it wasn't real. I think that's how I am now because all this doesn't feel real. I mean, logically it is. It just doesn't feel that way. Close quote.
And then you went on, Dr. Juliana, to ask her about blackouts. Can you tell, ladies and gentlemen, what y'all's conversation about blackouts was?
Yes.
For records, I think that's on the same page we were just looking at, same paragraph.
Okay. I had asked her if she ever experienced a blackout, and she said that's kind of what happened with the incident, the alleged offense. She discussed further about the blackout, saying that she would just kind of space out. And I believe she said in particular, whenever, like if her mom was yelling at her, or she was in trouble with her mom or something like that.
Did she ever use the words derealized?
She did not.
What about the word disassociation or disassociated?
No, she did not use those words.
Did she reveal to you that she was having intrusive memories regarding the crimes committed in this case?
Yes, she did.
Could you tell ladies and gentlemen about that?
Yes, so intrusive memories are just memories that someone is doing something else. They're not purposely thinking about something, and the memories just pop into their head. And once they get in their head and once they're thinking about them, it's really hard to stop thinking about them. It's hard to let go of those memories. And so I don't think at that point that I asked her for details about the intrusive memories regarding the offenses, because I had not yet determined whether she was competent to stand trial, and talking about that could have potentially revealed incriminating information. So I was waiting until later to ask that, and we never ended up circling back to that.
And Dr. Juliana, was there anything about your conversation where somebody said something about feeling queasy when they were thinking about the event?
Yes.
Tell me about that, if you would.
Carly reported that sometimes when she thought about the alleged offenses that she would feel queasy.
And what else did she say about being paranoid?
She described having thoughts that bad things were going to happen, such as that someone would jump on her in the jail or things like that. And in my experience and opinion, that's more consistent with anxiety than delusional paranoia. Whenever people kind of have those thoughts where they just worry about all these things that could potentially happen, that is symptomatic. You know, they often say that I'm paranoid that these things are going to happen, but they're not using it in the clinical sense of paranoia. And it's not what I would think of in the clinical sense as paranoia, as like psychotic paranoia.
I want to take us back, Dr. Juliana, the word queasy, and you talked about that Carly said she felt queasy when thinking about the event. Can you elaborate on what that meant?
I didn't ask her, but I was assuming that it meant sick to her stomach.
About the crimes that have been committed?
About something in relation to them. I didn't ask for any specifics.
At some point, Dr. Giuliano, did you have a discussion with Carly about whether or not she was hearing voices?
Yes, I did.
And what did she say about the voices?
She said that she had been hearing one voice, a male voice, since she was young. I think she said maybe around like 5 or 6 years old, which is unusual. And she said that she heard the voice every day and that it was always kind of there in the background, but she could usually ignore it and tune it out.
You said that it was unusual that somebody would start hearing a voice at 5 or 6. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, that's not really consistent with psychotic disorder. Typically, people start having symptoms of psychosis for women in their early to mid 20s. For men, it's late teens, early 20s. It's very unusual for a young child, to have what are actually hallucinations. And it's possible that it wasn't what we would clinically consider a hallucination. It could be, as a kid, it could be something like their own inner thoughts or their inner dialogue, and they don't recognize that as what that is.
She describes those voices that she was hearing every single day.
Yes.
Is that common in people in that age group?
No.
What did she say about whether or not these voices ever told her to do anything?
She said the voices never told her to do anything. She said that they made snide comments about other people and just really rude comments, kind of talking down about other people. I specifically asked her if the voices ever told her or said anything about her mom or her stepdad, and she said no.
You were present in the courtroom yesterday during Dr. Clark's testimony, right?
Yes.
And you heard mention that Carly had disclosed to an employee through Vital Court that, in fact, her mom, she heard voices that told her to harm her mom.
Yes, that's what Dr. Clark said.
So there's records saying Carly said, voices told me to hurt mom.
That's curious. So the voice never told her anything about her mom or her stepdad. Why did she pum her mom and also her stepdad?
Dr. Giuliano, as part of your evaluation
That's weird.
regarding competency, one of the things you consider is the defendant's ability to recall facts. Could you tell the ladies and gentlemen why that's important?
That is a requirement specifically for Mississippi. Most other states don't have that as part of their competence to stand trial requirement. There's not a clear definition of what is specifically meant by that in the standard. The general interpretation that I have for it is that it means that someone can recall basic information about their case. If they have a discussion with their attorney, are they able to remember what they talked about? What do they remember about the alleged offenses? If they don't have a good memory or don't remember the alleged offenses, are they able to go over the evidence and remember the evidence enough to be able to help their attorney prepare their defense?
And in this case, what did you find regarding Ms. Gregg's ability to remember relevant facts about the alleged offense?
It was my opinion that she had the ability to recall relevant facts. We talked about the month leading up to the alleged offenses and what all was going on with her then. and her report was fairly consistent with the records that I had available. She also did not demonstrate any current memory deficits that would have been concerning. So I didn't talk to her about that day in particular because I didn't end up evaluating her sanity at the time of the alleged offense. So I don't know exactly what all she recalls from that particular day.
With regards to your evaluation, did you in fact find a forensic opinion regarding Carly's ability to proceed to trial and competency?
Yes, it was my opinion that she had the ability to do so.
And is that to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty?
It is.
And again, just to kind of go through those factors with us, the ability to understand the nature and the proceedings against her.
Yes.
And then what else is that?
The ability to rationally communicate with her attorney about her case, the ability to recall relevant facts, and the ability to testify in her own defense if she chose to do so.
And in fact, you found that Carly was competent.
That was my opinion. I don't decide that. That's up to the court to decide.
And in this particular case, Dr. Giuliano, did you send your report to the clerk's office like you do when you're court ordered to perform an evaluation?
I did.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Lunch is here and it's set up and ready for y'all, so we're going to take a recess till at least 12:30. Remember not to discuss anything about the case at this point. Everyone, just whenever you're done, around 12:30 or thereafter, it's y'all's lunch.
Okay, so they break it for lunch.
Okay, everyone, please remain seated while the jury exits.
This case is, oh no. I hear what the clinical professionals are saying, but I mean, a lot of what they're explaining sounds to me like an average teenager. A lot of those emotions, with the exception of what she reported after the incident, regarding her mental state during and around the time frame of the alleged crime.
All right, we're outside the presence of the jury. Dr. Giuliano, you'll be free to move. You'll be free to leave during lunch. Be back no later than 12:30. No later, I mean. Well, yes, sir. Okay.
Guys, I'm gonna have to come back with the rest of day 3.
Or we'll be in recess till at least 12:20.
I'm gonna have to come back with the rest of day 3, guys, because I'm tired. Let's see. We'll keep going as long as I can. As long as I can. Keep going as long as I can, folks. So wait. Okay, so we are back. The judge is taking his seat. They do a whole lot of.
Bearing with me, I apologize. That was my fault. But I think we're ready to proceed now. Okay. State may call its next witness.
Stay close, Dr. Jason Pickett.
Just shut off the microphone, so I speak directly into it. Make sure you speak loud enough that that lady on the back right can hear you. Okay, so you understand me down to earth, your answers, sworn answers under penalty of perjury. I do, Your Honor. All right, you may proceed.
Dr. Pickett, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Hey, my name is Jason Pickett, Pickett. I am a board certified psychiatrist. I am a board certified emergency physician.
Yeah, we're not gonna listen to this right now, guys. I'm spent. I will come back early tomorrow. Probably it'll be earlier than this so that we can actually run the rest of day 3 and all of day 4. Okay? Because I'm exhausted right now. On the East Coast, it is 11 p.m. and I need to start settling in and getting my night routine started, guys. So thank you guys for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. Why is my chat not rolling? I want my overlay on. I don't understand. I thought I turned the overlay on, guys. But thank you guys for popping in. I will be back, like I said, tomorrow earlier so that we could get through the rest of day 3 and move on to day 4.